it back, and the doctor's like, prescriptions actually, you don't need as much.
Oh, wait.
All right.
Okay, yeah, you got that one.
Okay, well, let Allison sit down and we'll get going.
Hi, Allison. I got one present for you. Thank you.
Over there. Okay, how about you? Good? All right, good evening, everyone. We'll call to order at 6:01, and we will start this evening with agenda adjustments. It looks like we do have one addition for deliberation around building maintenance external trust, right?
Correct. We're going to add, we're doing the public hearing on the maintenance trust, so we'll just add a voting item on that. And the other piece is, that actually is the only adjustment.
Okay, very good. I didn't realize this was piping through. There we go. Can you hear me a little better? Okay. We will then move to correspondence, resignations, and nominations.
Sure. I have a couple of things. First of all, under correspondence, I want to let the board know that we have started the clean-out process for the basement area and different areas impacted by the project that is upcoming. The majority of those items are very dated, have been in the basement forever, and will be going to the transfer station. And by policy, if there are any items that we feel have value or can be utilized to maybe make money, we would come back to the board in August. But the vast majority of it is old cans of paint, broken chairs, desks, things of that nature. So we have started to make dump runs so that we'll be prepared for that project to start probably in mid-July. Okay? So that was it on that. The second thing, I know the board has received some communications regarding some personnel matters, and I just want to let the community know that I'm aware of those, and we'll be discussing it with the board in non-public later this evening, and I will give you an update at that point.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I do have 2 resignations. The first one I need is a motion to accept a resignation with regrets for Lisa Talcott. Lisa is a second grade teacher at third grade teacher at RMMS.
Okay, I will make a motion to accept the resignation of Lisa Talcott as a third grade teacher at RMMS with an effective date of June 30th
Correct.
of 2022.
Second.
Any discussion?
Is there a letter that was delivered to the school with that resignation?
Yes, it was. Lisa.
Are you able to read that to us?
Sure. I have truly enjoyed my 16 years teaching at RMS, where I've grown as both a teacher and learner. I've been fortunate to have many great opportunities, fond memories, strong student and family connections, and wonderful friendships with our staff. As you may know, I have 2 grandchildren. They are in need of family daycare provider. I have decided that this is an important time for my grandchildren. I will be resigning from my grade 3 teaching position to be able to cover daily care for them. My last day will be June 30th, 2022. I have always loved children, and being a teacher, I am excited about my new journey and to be able to offer daily care and educational experiences for my grandchildren at such an important time of their life. Thank you for your understanding. Lisa Talcott.
Okay. Ready to vote?
I mean, it's a
Oh.
huge loss, but I wish her well.
Yeah.
on her-
Okay, all those in favor? With regrets? 5-0. Thank you.
Okay. And the second one is for second grade teacher Katie Maluski from RMMS.
Okay, I will put a motion to accept resignation of Katie Maluski as a second grade teacher at RMMS with an effective date of June 30th, 2022. Seconded by Karen.
That one is with deep regret, I'll
Yep.
accept.
Mhm.
Yes,
Is there-
that's a huge loss.
Is there a letter that accompanies that resignation, please?
Yes, there is. I'd be happy to. It is with mixed emotions that I let you know that I will not be returning to RMS. Please accept this email as my formal resignation from employment within the Brookline School District. I have spent my entire 21 years of teaching career in the district. I have loved my job. I have been wholeheartedly dedicated to the children of Brookline, and I'm a better person for it. My career of 21 years has been spent at RMS, 6 principals, 3 positions within the school, hundreds of students and families. It has been a true pleasure to be part of it all. Over the past few years, there have been a significant shift in the focus and priority of education in general. It does not feel good professionally or personally. The top-down authoritative style of education, leaving teachers and students, the core of and reason for education, at the bottom is a failed structure. Decisions that directly impact staff and students are made by those who do not work with students and therefore don't see or know the impact of those decisions. On top of that, when there is no collaboration, respect, consideration, or kindness given to those working directly with the social, emotional, sensitive days, day in and day out, the very foundation of the top-down approach crumbles. No matter the transitions that RMMS went through, one thing stayed tried and true. It was the absolute compassion, dedication, and heart at the core of the school. Never was there a doubt that those children were absolutely priority number one in the eyes of the staff and was with them during every minute of every day. The selflessness is beyond compare. The teachers and support staff that work within those walls are the most compassionate, dedicated, hardworking, and simply good humans I have ever met. There are people that not only show the patience, resilience, and kindness to the students, but the same level support, compassion, and solitude for each other. The collegial net that is created by those of us in the foundation, the trenches, is like anything you have experienced anywhere. It is for these reasons that the children grow and are loved, safe, taught, challenged, and cared for, and despite the crumbling within, SAU still looks good from the outside. Wishing you reflection. Katie Maluski.
Okay. I guess the only thing I'd offer, I've had the opportunity to know her. I did not know Mrs. Talcott, but I did know Ms. Maluski, and I certainly agree with the deep regrets comment. I wish her well.
I'd like to say that it's very upsetting to me, having only been on the board since April, I think is when we were set. One of the first things that I asked for was a way to do like a working environment assessment of our schools in Brookline, knowing that our teachers had been through a lot in the last few years. And it was unfortunate that that was seen as a way for grievances to be aired, and that's something that unions deal with, when I think what really needs to happen is that there needs to be, we do it in hospitals all the time, we do healthy work environment. We do 360 evaluations of each other, our leadership, people who work beside us, people who we delegate to, and having heard some of these concerns back in March and April, that was one of the first things I think I asked for as a member of this board. And so with that, I'm going to be voting nay to accept Katie's resignation.
Okay. Are we ready for a vote? All in favor? All opposed? Very good. Thank you.
I have 2 nominations. The first one is for Melissa Enolat ENNULAT, for a kindergarten position at RMMS. She has her Bachelor's in Music from UMass Amherst and a Master's in Early Childhood Education from Merrimack College. She would be placed on the salary scale at Master's Step 1 of $46,601.
46, what was the last part?
46,601.
Thank you. Okay, so I will make the motion to accept superintendent's nomination of Melissa Emulet for the position of kindergarten at RMMS at a step Masters 1 with a salary of $46,601.
Second?
Seconded. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? 5-0, thank you.
The second nomination is for Angela Wyand, W-Y-A-N-D, as a reading specialist at RMMS. She has her Bachelor's in Elementary and Special Ed from Riviere. She has her Master's in Technology in the Classroom from Walden University, and she has her Master's in Reading and Writing from SNU. She would be placed on the salary scale at Master's plus 30, Step 14, for $73,310.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to accept the superintendent's nomination of Angela Wyan for the position of reading specialist at RMMS at Master's Step 14 and a salary of $73,310.
It's Masters plus 30.
Masters
Step 14.
plus step of Masters, Step 14 plus 30? Masters
plus 30, Step 14.
Masters plus 30, Step 14, at a salary of $73,310. Seconded by Karen.
Yes.
All in favor? 5-0, thank you.
That's it for correspondence, resignations, and nominations.
Okay, so what we'll do next is the approval of minutes, and then we will have our public hearing on the maintenance trust, and then we will have public input. Okay, so the approval of minutes, the first one is for the May 25th, 2022 Brookline School Board meeting. The following amendments were offered. Page 5, line 28, replace the period with a comma. Page 8, line 30, replace that with than. I will make the motion to accept as amended. Seconded by Karen, all in favor? 5-0, thanks. The next is our Brookline School Board first public hearing on May 25th. Allison, you have to abstain on this one. And I'll make the motion to accept as presented. Seconded by Karen, all in favor? 4, abstention, thank you, 4-0-1. Same on this next one for the second public hearing on May 25th, 2022. I'll make the motion to accept as presented. Seconded by Karen. All in favor? 4, abstention, 1. Thank you, 4-0-1. Then we had a non-public on May 25th, 2022. I will make the motion to accept as presented. Seconded. All in favor? You were at that one. You came in late.
Okay.
All in favor is 5-0. Thank you.
I always come in late.
And then on June 9th, we had our special Brookline District meeting, and I will make the motion to accept as presented. Seconded by Karen. All in favor? 5-0. Very good. Okay, so at this point, we're moving over to our public hearing, which is around the Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust. So I'm going to make a motion to recess until the conclusion of the public hearing.
Second?
Seconded by Allison, and so we are recessing at 6:14 p.m.
Do you need a call?
Sorry?
Do you need a vote call?
No.
Recess? No.
No. If you want to grab that microphone, and Kelly, you won't move that one down, it might be easier for everyone to hear too. It's up to you. Okay, so what we'll do is move over to our public hearing. And this is in accordance with RSA 198-20C. I guess I'll turn it over to the principal team to go over. Dan and Trish, are you presenting this, or is it?
I got it.
Oh, Andy. Okay, very good, thank you.
The Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust, during the budget season, we identified several needed repairs, improvements for the respective buildings at CSDA and RMMS. As a hearing for the 23 budget, the Brookline School Board recommended that the funding source for these particular items be the Brookline Maintenance Expendable Trust. The voters approved the board's recommendation during the 2022 voting session. Therefore, this is the official request to use the expendable trust for the following expenses. Please note that there is one additional identified need, the CSDA gym floor refinishing project, that was not part of the original budget process. So the FY23 requested items in the estimated cost. At RMMS, we have classroom flooring for rooms 15, 35, and 36 for $17,000. We have a push bar replacement on some of our doors, phase 1, for $5,000. We have trim replacement on the outside of the building at $8,000. We have gutter and storm drain repair of $3,600, and we're resealing the parking lot for $21,227, for a total of $54,827 at RMMS. At CSDA, we have the gym floor refinishing of $3,000, the specialist room flooring of $17,000, the window balance seals of $5,000, the exterior doors update of $6,700, and their parking lot resale of $19,925, for a total at CSDA of $51,625, and for a grand total of $106,452. The current balance of the expendable trust is $99,150. The voters approved adding $75,000 to that at this year's annual session. We are proposing expenditures of the $106,452, resulting in ending balance after these repairs are done of $67,698. Kelly also just wanted to provide you, based on last month, the board has approved up to $40,000 for the use of the Special Ed Trust Fund in FY22. And she provided you the status. The current balance was $185,100, and that assumes that we use the full $40,000. To be added in FY23, we would add $25,000, which was approved by the voters, which would give us a resulting balance in the Special Ed Trust Fund of $210,180. And that's it for the Brookline Trust.
Okay, very good. So these public hearings, at this point, really, we do 2 rounds of testimony in favor or opposition, and you're welcome to come up to the microphone, state your name and your street address, and whether you have testimony in favor or opposition. As a board, we had previously planned on what Superintendent Corey just went over. So this is, been reviewed in some of our board meetings over the past few months. So now it's an opportunity for the public if you have any input. So I will open it up for both the maintenance trusts as well as the special ed trust. First, for any testimony in favor. Okay. Testimony in opposition. Very good. We're going to do this again, so it's not meant to be awkward, but how this works. So ask for testimony in favor. All right, and testimony in opposition. Okay, hearing none, we will close the public hearing at 6:19 p.m. then. Okay, so now we are coming to our public input session. I'm just going to, which I do at every meeting, talk about our policy BEDH. It allows for a maximum of 15 minutes to hear public comment. The period may be extended by a majority vote of the board. Individual speakers will be allotted 3 minutes per person. Speakers may not relinquish allotted time to another speaker. So, we'll see how things are going here. And I'd ask, again, if you could just come up with your name and your street address and try to work to the 3 minutes, please. And we'll open up for public input.
left my vacation with my family to be here because I thought it was that important.
Thank you.
So I had a little bit down, but mostly it was go off. Oh, sorry.
And can you state your name and what road you live on?
Rebecca Liedberg, 5 Clover Hill Way, in Brookline. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. Disappointed, disheartened, disgusted. These are the feelings that I have as I stand before you. I built a home in Brookline so that my son would be given the best education and experience. He is not. His dyslexia was not identified by the special ed team. He wasn't evaluated when he was referred by his kindergarten teacher. When he was bullied last year, nothing was done about it. When he was bullied this year, nothing was done about it. His favorite teachers were fired. Miss Healy and Miss Gordon, I don't know when you guys reviewed the resignations, as that even seems to be up for debate, but the resignation by Miss Gordon was actually forced in what I feel was wrongful termination. I've spoken with many, many parents, most of which are here tonight, and I hope we could maybe make a motion to hear from more than just 5 of them, that most have very similar experiences where their requests were not responded to, where their words were not heard, where their grievances were not heard. I'm concerned about everything from the safety of the school. I drove past the school the day after Uvalde, as I'm sure a lot of other parents did, and the back doors were propped open. And I guess it was for a milk delivery, but I didn't see anyone around. And when I called Kim at the front desk, I was told that we're getting a milk delivery. The cafeteria ladies are the first, are inside that door. Well, great, they'll be the first ones to get shot. I mean, frankly, our doors shouldn't be propped open in our school. RMMS is disorganized, it's dysfunctional. Our teachers at RMMS don't feel supported. Our parents don't feel supported. And I don't know whose problem that is. I guess I've been trying to figure it out with Ken Haig and with other folks. But overall, there's been so much turnover at RMMS. There's an issue with the mic. There's been so much turnover. I don't know what's happening. Do you want to fix this?
Yeah, I didn't hear that. So yeah, please fix it. Pause her time and let her have her whole time.
There's been so much turnover at RMMS, I think to the tune of like 15 to 18 different staff members, depending on who you ask. I don't really understand it at all. Well, it's becoming more clear because I'm realizing that it's a culture there. I think there's a pattern behind non-tenured teachers not reaching tenure. I think there's a pattern of possibly forcing resignations or doing terminations before they have the opportunity to reach tenure. And I think if you look into it, I don't have all of the information I would need to look into it, but the special ed department needs to be seriously looked at. There's illegal practices such as my son not being given accommodations that he should have, like break cards for the first whole month of school, not being given his entire IEP, his teacher and case manager not being made available the current updated IEP that he's supposed to have. It is an absolute disaster. And my husband and I built a house in this town to give our son the best, and we are so far from the best. It's ridiculous. And many other parents have this same story or parallel story, and I wish I was in your shoes. I hope maybe I'll run for the board at some point. I wish I was in your shoes because I really encourage you to hear these parents out and really take into consideration their experiences, because there should be a no tolerance on bullying. There should be no tolerance on special ed services not being fully given to the standards of the IEP. And there seriously needs to be looked into these procedures and practices that are happening at the school that are not being followed, and teachers that are not being given access to what they need. And there's absolutely no reason that they shouldn't have the support. They need paras. The Hollis paras are paid way more than the Brookline paras. You need paras. So if you need paras, we have to offer benefits and good money. We can't be sending down a secretary to handle a child that's out of control. They're not able to handle that situation. They're not trained to handle that situation. If I go to Andy Corey, he tells me that they're fully staffed. If I go to Dan, they tell me that they're not fully staffed and that he needs more staff and more resources. So which is it? Are they fully staffed or are they not? Why were Miss Healy and Miss Gordon let go when they both had impeccable records, when they were both viewed as the gold standard for a teacher at that school? We love them. My son is in tears. When I just left him on vacation right now, he knew Mommy was going to fight for what was right. Mommy was going to fight for Miss Healy and Miss Gordon. He is devastated because these two have been heroes to him. They've fought, they've advocated, and when that week that they were let go, that mystery week in March that we don't know what happened, there was a behind the closed doors meeting with the administration, which was probably 2 people, and the decision was made. Well, I can tell you that week, that was the first time I had ever not consented to an IEP. That was the first time I told the principal that I would be getting an education attorney because they couldn't get my child reading past a kindergarten level B because he's dyslexic, and they weren't doing the Orton Gillingham that they should have been doing. And it was the first time that I told him I would probably go for an out-of-district placement if they couldn't get him reading at grade level. And it happens to be the week that Miss Healy and Miss Gordon were suddenly terminated out of nowhere for no good reason. So you put the puzzle pieces together because you have all of the information and access to all of the information. And fix this, because my son deserves a lot more than his 2 favorite teachers being terminated for no good reason. And I really hope, and I hope whatever attorneys get involved, don't find out that this was possibly done because of the advocacy that they did for their children, because I have reason to believe that the reason these teachers were terminated was because of the advocacy that they did for their kids.
Thank you.
Leanne McHale, 42 Westview Road. Mr. Corey and Brookline School Board, many of us are here tonight as confused and frustrated parents to offer our unwavering support in the face of the forced resignation of Miss Valerie Gordon. As Rebecca has already spoken to, she was a wonderful teacher. She got my son from kindergarten, not reading at all, to reading above a 2nd grade level in 1st grade. And she went above and beyond, and she put him down, and when he was already good at math, she gave him a 16-sided die, while other kids may have had a 6-sided die, just to keep him from getting bored. She used all of her tools in the toolbox. But I'm here for more than that. I'm here specifically to shed light on an alarming and disturbing pattern that has been uncovered by the collection of parents as we evaluate what exactly seems to be happening with the attrition of some of our highest and most respected performers at RMMS. We are told year after year, as we pay one of the highest tax rates in the state, how important our facilities, compensation packages, and overall operation is to attracting and retaining the best possible employees for our children. Yet, for the last several years, we have watched in bewilderment as some of those teachers and support staff we know to be the best and most respected quietly vanish from our ranks. These departures are never addressed. We watch as the pattern repeats the very next year, and we are told there's nothing to see here. Your days of hiding the truth from us are over. As you know, parents talk, not only to each other, but to those departed professionals with whom we have built relationships during the school year. We have learned there is a common thread to these departures of our most adored professionals. We know that you know what that thread is too, Mr. Corey, as many of us have shared those observations and conversations with you along the way. The consistent thread that has been shared with us is a lack of transparency, communication, and integrity by our RMMS principal. Ms. Gordon's resignation should be a matter of public record, but it was not included in any of the minutes. Fortunately, she had the courage to share her resignation letter with us, so we knew exactly what happened. There are many, many others, just like Ms. Gordon, who have experienced this utter unprofessionalism and lack of integrity described in her letter. The themes are alarming. Teachers who tried to escalate unreported attacks of violence were told to be quiet. Teachers who refused to comply with the ridiculous window policy. Teachers who were more lenient on masking. Teachers who tried to get services for their children and were told not to let the parents know that the district wasn't meeting their needs. In short, not being a yes person for the incompetence of our principals seems to result in your departure. We've experienced similar problems as parents. When we raise concerns, the RMMS principal spends. We've experienced similar problems as parents. When we raise concerns, the RMMS principal spends more energy avoiding issues than solving them. Parents are constantly required to escalate to you, Mr. Corey, over his consistent inaction and abdication of responsibility. Mr. Corey, you've made the mistake, intentional or not, of sharing with us when the RMMS principal has mishandled the situation of our children. You are frequently apologizing to us for his behavior, and as we share these findings with each other, the numbers are staggering to us and embarrassing for you, quite frankly. Many of the parents who could not attend this meeting have sent letters to our school board detailing the same. Many of them are afraid to speak up over fear of retaliation. We could go on, but here's the real question the board and administration must answer. Nothing we've told you is news to you. Behind the small set of examples are dozens more. Parents and former employees are willing to speak up, document, and publicize exactly how your tolerance of this ineptitude has failed all of us. It is clearly time to bring leaders of integrity, honor, and transparency to our district. Are you co-conspirator in this incompetence, or are you here to serve the best interests of our children and our community? The parents will keep collaborating, documenting, and uncovering the wrongdoings until competence, trust, and transparency are restored. We will work on this until the change our children deserve is realized. It sounds like forced resignations have become a favorite pastime around here. We all know exactly which one needs to come next. Thank you. I have a copy of my speech for public record.
Good evening. My name's Karen Dalton. I live at 29 Hillside Drive. I've been a Brookline resident for 7 years now. 2 of my 4 children are currently enrolled in the district. My children have had a total of 9 different teachers. All but 1 has been phenomenal. 8 out of 9 teachers have given my kids a fantastic school experience. Even my middle 2, who've never had a normal school year in their life because of COVID. It was brought to my attention last week by a fellow parent that Valerie Gordon, my son Ethan's first grade teacher this past year, would be leaving RMMS after just 1 year. At first, I was simply sad to see the district lose a great teacher, but I assumed she had received another opportunity or was leaving for personal reasons. I was shocked and dismayed to learn that that was not the case. Everyone in this room understands that running a school in a district is just like any other business. and in turn, personnel matters are confidential. So none of us here are asking for you to divulge any confidential personnel information. But as a parent of a student who had the pleasure of having Ms. Gordon for the past year, I feel it's important that I and we voice our concern over the district's handling of this situation. I also understand there are two sides to every story, and it's unfortunate that the district will not explain its reasoning behind forcing qualified, well-liked teacher like Ms. Gordon to resign from her position. We have all received and reviewed Ms. Gordon's resignation letter. It's not only forced, but the threat to provide false information to a prospective employer as punishment for not doing so is blackmail and, quite frankly, abhorrent. Even if there was a personnel matter at hand, it clearly was not egregious enough to warrant termination during the school year. Instead of hiding behind the legality of not having to disclose the reason for her contract termination as her employer, why would the district not provide her with the feedback necessary to help her learn and grow from whatever the issue was, or address via a performance plan? We can only assume, given her positive reviews by her boss, as well as the feedback that I have heard from parents and students alike, there was no personnel issue. So we are left scratching our heads as to why we are losing this wonderful teacher from our district. We certainly do not have an overstaffing problem to contend with, which would be the only other logical reason. My son entered Ms. Gordon's class last fall slightly behind his peers in math and reading. She immediately recognized he needed some additional assistance and contacted me to let me know the same. She suggested he receive some math and reading intervention. I encouraged her to do whatever she thought was going to get him up to speed with his classmates in the shortest amount of time. He finished first grade reading at a level J. He reads full books to me now at bedtime, instead of the other way around. He is so incredibly proud of himself, as I am of him. In his end-of-year memory book, he wrote his favorite subjects are math and reading, and he's looking forward to learning more next year. That is a drastic improvement from a child who earlier this year wouldn't even try to read a book because he didn't know how, and he would get incredibly frustrated with himself in trying to do so. He's also had a few behavioral issues over the course of the year. He's 6. They've resulted in a call from Ms. Gordon at the end of the school day. She's calmly explained to me what happened and prepared me to address the issue at home if necessary, once he returned home, and let me know how she had addressed it during the school day. She always handled herself professionally and appropriately. I recently read to Ethan's class, and while I was only there for 20 minutes, I watched her interact with the children, and it was everything I want a teacher to be for my child. In talking with Ethan, he's told me that he is sad that Ms. Gordon is going to teach at another school because he will miss seeing her. He has never had a bad word to say. In fact, I was thrilled he had so many positive things to say over the course of the entire year. In closing, I think we respectfully request that the board review the reason behind Ms. Gordon's termination, as well as any others who may have been put into this situation through no fault of their own. While I would love to see her be reinstated to her job here in Brookline, it's equally as important to ensure that no other teachers are put in this position again. Threatening their livelihood when they give everything to our kids is inexcusable.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bobby DePalma. I live on Pigeon Hill Road. So I recently found out that Miss Healy, my son's first grade teacher, was also terminated as part of the process here. I don't know what went behind it, but I would like to say that these teachers are dealing with a lot because of COVID. My son comes home every day and tells me of all the behavioral issues that he witnesses. And instead of hearing what a great day my son had, all I hear over and over again is all the trouble with the kids. I've actually witnessed myself in the pickup line, some kid gets sucker punched. And it's the same kid some of the times I'm hearing stories about. So I just would like to ask that these teachers get the support that they need because they are going above and beyond, dealing every day, not just with teaching and supporting these kids, but with all the behavioral issues on top of it that in all honesty, they're not responsible for. And COVID has just impacted that so much. And this is really a thankless job for these teachers that work so hard. And I feel horrible what happened. Like these other parents, my son was in tears when he heard that Miss Healy was not coming back and was let go. He loves her. We also went through special ed and was declined for my son. His writing is so awful from being behind from COVID. And Miss Healy took it upon herself to work extra with him to get his handwriting back. She also, without us even asking, brought him extra math to work on because he was so far ahead of the other kids.
I mean, these teachers are really stepping up to the plate and providing these kids what they're not getting from the services, not to mention dealing with all of the behavioral issues every day on top of everything else that's distracting kids from learning. They need our help. They need us to support them, not turn our backs on them. So I'm here personally today to represent Ms. Healy and support for my son to help these teachers get what they need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie Kendall. I live at 112 Route 13, Unit D, here in Brookline. I wasn't going to speak. I came here to support Rebecca. She's been a very fantastic friend of mine. But I'm in a really unique position here, besides the fact that my voice carries and I don't really need the microphone. I feel like this is a tale of two cities. I've raised 6 children between Hollis and Brookline. I fled to Brookline in 2019 because my spouse was very abusive, and I had a restraining order and I had to leave. The culture in Hollis, in that school district, which I saw 4 children go through, 2 are now graduating, and the culture in Brookline and the support, more specifically, that's offered to Brookline teachers, RMMS, principle, is glaring. When I came to Brookline in 2019, Mr. Molinari has gone out of his way from day one to make sure that myself and my children feel safe and taken care of. Ironically, my older child is a behavior problem. He's an extreme behavior problem because of the abuse that he had to endure at the hands of his father in infancy, because he's in the process of being diagnosed with what used to be called Asperger's syndrome. He's a lot. And I don't want to stand here and hear both sides of the story and see people that I know would lay down their lives for my children become martyrs in a situation where what I can see from the outside looking in is disproportionate resource allocation. End of story. Why doesn't Mr. Molinari have an assistant principal? Why do his paraeducators do not get all their benefits, get paid less than paraeducators in Hollis? I have teachers whose jobs are not to have to handle my older son's behavioral issues, volunteering to help. Everybody in that school, including Mr. Molinari, are deeply passionate about the care and support and progress of the children there. And so what I see in this uniquely outside situation is its resources. You know, he can't be everywhere. Everybody there cannot be everywhere. And they are doing the absolute best with the very little that they've been given. In Hollis, you've got basically everything you need. Plenty of teachers, plenty of staff, plenty of benefits, assistant principals. Why doesn't Hollis have what Brookline has? There's just as many children, or nearly at this point. So why did Hollis get a complete overhaul of their school, their lower elementary school, years ago? And Brookline is just now seeing updates. You know, I hear parents' concerns about the safety of their children, the way that things are being operated. And again, I'm in the unique position of knowing that the reason that the staff operates within this building is because they really don't have a lot of choice. They're doing the best of what they have. So what do I ask you, board members, superintendent? Where's the resolution? You know, I don't feel like people need to be hung who are just doing their best with what they have. We need to just give everybody what they need. I know that's not easy in terms of budget, but let's get it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just if I could, we're going to keep going. We'll put it to a vote. I'm just going to ask if everyone could just be mindful of the 3 minutes. I appreciate all your inputs. I'm going to throw a vote. Are we okay to keep going beyond our time? All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Let's go ahead. Thanks.
Good evening. Steve Brogan, 9 Hollis Lane, excuse me. I'm a bit shocked, actually, at some of the things that I'm hearing tonight. I have not been privy to some of these details that I'm hearing, and I'm surprised. So we moved here just about 5 years ago because Brookline was one of the highest-rated school systems in the whole state. We picked, of all the towns we could have moved to in southern New Hampshire, we picked Brookline. I drive an hour and 20 minutes every day to get to work because the schools are good here. My wife drives an hour to work every day because the schools are good here. So we understand and recognize that. We also recognize budgets and all that stuff. She couldn't be here, unfortunately, my wife, tonight, but I'm going to read to you what she has, and then I have a couple comments after, so I'll try to be quick. This evening, we're gathering to share concern over the recent resignation of Valerie Gordon, a first-grade teacher at RMMS. As a parent of one of our students, I'm both shocked and disheartened to hear that Miss Gordon was forced to resign for this position. As with many first graders, this was our daughter's first classroom experience after completing kindergarten via Zoom. This was a challenging transition for our daughter, as I'm sure it was for pretty much everybody, and Miss Gordon as a new teacher in the district with a classroom full of students who had never been in a structured classroom environment. Very unfortunate situation. A few months into the school year, Miss Gordon reached out and recommended additional help for our daughter as she was not at the expected levels for reading and math, which we had been concerned about after a year of remote learning. Ms. Gordon advocated on our daughter's behalf to ensure that she received the help that she needed and kept us up to date with her progress and provided recommendations on how we could expand her progress at home. When our household was hit with COVID shortly after April break, we were concerned that multiple weeks out of school would deteriorate any progress she had made. Ms. Gordon hand-delivered stuff to my house with all kinds of notes, tons of schoolwork, and very comprehensive instructions to ensure that our daughter didn't lose momentum and didn't fall behind. Over the last few months, we've seen our daughter's confidence blossom, and she's now doing equations at home of her own will, reading stories to us and her little brother, as well as writing her own stories and cartoons. It's very cute to watch, mind you. Schools have not been unscathed by the Great Resignation, and many areas have seen an exodus of teachers from the profession and an increase in student enrollment. To my knowledge, there has been no disciplinary action against this teacher, who I can only commend for all of her work this past school year. So I can't imagine why this administration would force the resignation of a teacher who has worked so hard for our children. That was my wife's comments. I have a few questions, kind of more rhetorical questions, but I want to ask, has anybody ever planted a fruit tree? You spend months and months, sometimes years, building the soil, trying to get everything ready, fertilizing, planting the tree, watering the tree, weeding the tree, mulching the tree. It takes years, it takes a long time to finally get it to bear fruit. The relationship between my daughter and Miss Gordon was that fruit tree, and they bore fruit this year. They did a fantastic job. Miss Gordon, I can't commend her enough for the amount of work and the effort that she had to put in, not only for my daughter, but for all the kids, and the nonsense they had to deal with because of COVID. This has made everybody upside down because of this whole thing. I don't understand what's going on and the reasons behind it, and I know I'm not supposed to because it's a personal matter. I get it. I also get that there's budgets and everything, but here's the deal. You're chopping down the tree before it has a chance to bear more fruit. Fruit trees in the second, third, fourth, and so on years bear even more fruit. They get better because they have deeper roots and they can do their job even better. Miss Gordon is that fruit tree. And for whatever reason you're chopping this tree down, you better have a darn good reason for it because you're chopping down a really good tree. The only other things I have to ask is there a projected decrease in the student population for first grade coming up next year? Second of all, did the school budget, I don't recall, get an increase or stay the same over those from last year? If you got an increase, and if you have an increase in students, again, I don't understand what's going on here. I don't understand why I'm standing here having to talk to you about this. I have no issues with Mr. Molinari. I think he's done by us a good job. He's been responsive to any questions that we have. So I don't know if it's miscommunication. I don't know if it's a top-level thing. I don't know if it's a low-level thing. But whatever it is, it sounds like there's a culture thing that's going on. It needs to get figured out before we lose more teachers and chop down more trees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa McGoldrick, 17 Wildwood Drive. Members of the school board, our schools have a bullying problem. It is the responsibility of the school to provide a safe environment that promotes learning for all students. I do want to call to your attention to one apparent issue that would immediately improve school safety. That issue is the absolute and total disregard by the administration to follow the school's own handbook and relevant bullying behavioral issue guidance. This is emboldened by two key factors. First, an apparent lack of checks and balances as incidents occur, and second, a lack of auditing of disciplinary cases. For example, this spring, my son was assaulted in school. In conversation with the principal, I asked what disciplinary measures would be taken against the aggressor. He replied, well, what do you want me to do? I have to follow the handbook. I don't suspend kids. Thinking this, his hands must be tied with a lack of options and policy guidance, I reviewed the handbook myself and came to learn that several pages are dedicated to this topic, with sections on student development and age-appropriate guidance, helpful, hurtful guidelines, and 3 tiers of escalated behaviors with examples of actions and corresponding disciplinary measures. In this case, it would fit the definition of Tier 3 offense. Given the principal literally every option to consider when confronted with citations from the handbook, and again asked how this would be handled, he instead went on to downplay the incident. It was very clear that the principal took no interest in following the handbook and no interest in enacting any disciplinary measures that would discourage bullying from occurring again. Much easier nothing, which is exactly what my son observed. That nothing. No missed recesses, no detentions, no loss of any privileges or guidance counselor visits occurred. What a terrible lesson for a young child to learn. That when something bad happens and you go to an adult for help, they'll do nothing. There is a lack of checks and balances at the time of the incident. The principal serves as judge, jury, and executioner over all disciplinary matters. He's practically the king. I find it shocking that we would empower one person with that much authority to independently decide such matters. No one is there to be a sounding board or question decisions being made, or even sign off that they support the decisions being made. As the saying goes, all power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The only thing worse than sole decision-making authority is when it is also accompanied by zero oversight. The board approves the handbook and policies within it, but how do you know how well they are performing? How often they are being utilized? What is correctly or incorrectly understood? This is the opportunity to dig in, compare the documented incidents and outcomes to policy. Is the administration living up to the expectations and following the directions set by the board through these policies? You need an audit. It's time to act, create the checks and balances, the oversight, the auditing, step in and ensure administrators fulfill their responsibilities to keep students safe by adhering to our handbook or remove them from their job and find ones who will. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to come up for public input?
Hi, Candace Cunha, 1 Baldwin. I don't have anything prepared like everybody else, but Mr. Corey, as you read Mrs. Maluski's resignation letter, I felt a hole inside of me. When Cam, my son, grade 2, got assigned Miss Maluski over the summer, I knew right away that that was going to be the teacher that was going to turn him around. Crazy. So I feel like it's a huge loss that our district is losing teachers like her. I'm sorry, it's emotional. Miss Maluski's done a lot for my son. She also did a lot for my daughter, who had her for a very short year because of COVID. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the other people who spoke about Miss Gordon and Miss Healy, their experiences. But I do think that if there is a culture problem within our community, that lots of families like myself with children who deserve, as all do our own children, the best education, that we need to provide that to them. So I'm sad to hear Ms. Maluski and other great teachers are leaving. So hopefully we will get to the bottom of whatever there is to get to the bottom of, and thank you.
Thank you.
have anything prepared either, but hearing my son also had Mrs. Maluski this year, and I kind of saw it coming, and I've got to be honest, I've seen it coming for a while. I moved here for the schools before I had a child who was identified as someone who had ADHD and who needed a 504. But Mrs. Maluski did everything in her power to make his classroom experience a positive one. And I think we need to get to the point where we are lifting up our students and our teachers before we have more children that they have to choose between. Because I feel like that's what we're doing to them right now, because we're not supporting them enough. We don't have enough staff. My son is constantly left unattended for his breaks. I can't get a 504 meeting, which I asked for. I'm disappointed, honestly. Like, I understand Brookline and our smaller schools are not known for their special education, but I gotta tell you, we have a lot of kids who need a lot of help, and I know that my son is not the only one. And it disappoints me because I get told, well, he's not the worst one. He's not our biggest problem. But he's my kid, and he's not thriving. And when he's in your school district, he should be thriving. And if you don't know how to do that for him, then we need to figure it out, because he's not the only one. And I just want to say, I trust you guys. We elect you. I trust you guys. So build that trust back for me, because right now, and this isn't a COVID thing, this isn't something that's just happened in the past year for me. I felt it in the pit of my stomach when I spoke to her at the beginning of the year. I felt it in my other teachers. And I'm not sure what's happening, but we need to work together and fix it. And it's not calling people out and hanging people out to dry. It's working together as a community to figure it out, and what us parents can do to support our teachers and our staff. Because I'm not sure what to do. I love the PTO, I love coming to school board meetings, but what else can we do? I'm not sure. So I would just ask for you, I want that trust back, because I feel like it's broken right now. And as a lot of other parents said, a lot of other people are afraid to speak out. There's a lot of people, it's just be there for the kids. Like, that's what, we need to put them first, and then everything else will really solve itself. That's honestly what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon Sinclair, 1 Lancey Brook Road, Brookline. I am a teacher in the building, for the record. I'm just going to say, while I don't have all the answers, I don't know all the information, I wish there were greater transparency. I know that's a typical, normal public school thing. I have a lot of family members who are teachers. This problem is global right now. But I want to say that in that building, every day, your children are cared for. I promise you. Your children are thriving. Your children are loved. I personally guarantee that, and I know a ton of people who do. Well, I don't have all the answers, and I don't necessarily know if things are perfect in the building. Absolutely not. I've never worked in a building that was. That said, your children are loved and cared for. They're learning. They're growing. I promise. And it will get better when we do have a lot more support, as the rest of the world will get more support as we all recover from this little chapter. That's all.
Thanks, Shannon. Thank you.
Okay, just one more for anyone that hasn't had a chance. If now, otherwise we will continue on.
Ms. Gordon would like to read her resignation letter out loud.
I'm sorry?
Ms. Gordon would like to read her resignation letter out loud.
I don't know that she's here, so that's not.
She's here.
Is she I mean, this, if she's, unfortunately, if she's not a resident of Brookline, we can't, that's part of the policy.
Let her read her resignation letter, please.
Please
Let
don't
her-
make this contentious.
No, I'm not making this contentious.
I'm just
It was
following our
covered,
policies.
it was not made public, and we're requesting that it be read out loud.
I have to follow our policies.
Just, if I could,
Can we make a motion to hear the resignation letter? Okay, we'll have a Brookline.
It's,
I'm sorry, this is part of our policy, we can't do that. We want to hear you, and I'm sorry, I read it up, please don't make this contentious. And as I said, speakers may not relinquish allotted time to another speaker. That's part of our policy. This is another speaker. Why, we are not at odds. We are listening to you and writing everything you have down. We have a non-public after this. We are hearing you because we have policies.
Mr. Chair?
Again,
I would just like to state that it's about, like, one of the reasons that I didn't bring up an issue with another person reading
Thank you.
the statement was because it was a spouse of a Brookline resident. Because, in my view, this is not a Brookline resident, that is why it shouldn't be in the public portion of it.
So why did you read the other teacher? She's a teacher. You just read two of them in the beginning.
So, if something wants to be done within the public the normal portion of the meeting, and we want to have another addendum done to have the letter read, just like Mr. Corey did on the first one, I would not be opposed to it.
It was supposed to be read.
excuse me. First of all, I don't recommend it based on my conversation with legal counsel today, number one. Number two, in March, as part of our process, we bring to the board the nominations of staff. Once that nomination list goes through, people who are not on the nomination list will end employment with us. So on the timeliness of when the resignation was received versus when the nomination went through, there is a large disparity. And I'm gladly give the board further information during non-public. But I do not recommend this based on legal counsel. That's all I can tell you.
Andy, May 25th, this resignation was received on May 25th. So if it was received on May 25th, was it reviewed in this meeting in May?
The nomination list for employees went to the school board in March.
Right, but what I'm saying to you is her resignation letter has not been presented to the school board yet, or has it?
The nomination was done in March. I will explain to the board in non-public. It's
Right, but the resignation letter was not written and delivered to you guys until May 25th. And May 25th, it was not brought to the school board meeting. I have an email from Ken Haig telling me that it was not included in the correspondence section. If it was not included in the correspondence section, it would be included in the correspondence section tonight, having been turned in on May 25th.
And what I
did not
just
say
said,
that.
just to clarify,
I can bring up the email right
I
now.
told you that we were looking into why it wasn't in
You said
correspondence.
it wasn't in the, you were looking
period.
into why it wasn't in the
And
correspondence section.
period. I did not say that it would be delivered tonight. So
No,
let's not use...
if it was a resignation by a teacher and it was handed in on May 25th, would you, as the board, expect to review that resignation in May or June? When will you review it?
Not necessarily. We've received plenty of resignations without reviewing the letters that came along with them.
can I just again further clarify? You are correct on the date that the letter was presented. It was presented to me. On the advice of legal counsel, it was not read. Because when we read things at the board, we have to be very conscious of the ramifications to the board and to the district. So that's why it was not read. I conferred again with legal counsel today. And I'm going to explain that in non-public, but I can't go into further detail.
So if there's forced resignations, it is possible that you will make it so that we as parents and as community members do not hear what's in the contents of the resignation letters if they speak poorly of the administration. Is that correct?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
That's exactly what you're saying. If it harms the reputation of the administration, then it won't be read because it has to do with their reputation. And then we will never know what's going on.
And that's a legal statute.
Can I ask
Under an RSA, you cannot,
We can't all talk at once. Can we talk one at a time, just because I can't even understand, I can't hear people. Like logistically, I know everybody's upset, but can we please talk one at a time so we've been listening to all of you. There's somebody at the, okay, can we?
Because you have not voted to close the public input yet. She can read the dictionary if she so chooses. She can read what she has in her hand.
I'm just wondering if I can ask a point of clarification. So when I joined the board, I knew that before I had joined the board, the decision had been made about who was being offered contracts for the next year and who wasn't being offered contracts for the next year. I didn't know any of those people's names, so I don't know anything about that more than what I was told at that time. But my understanding, and I don't know if this is where Ms. Gordon fits in or not, but if a teacher is not offered a contract, then they don't have a position to resign from. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I think that again, I don't know the situation. We haven't had our non-public section yet, but as I was listening to this, I was wondering if that might be the situation, in which case, I asked for the letters of resignation to be read for the two teachers who were submitted tonight because I knew they were tenured faculty with professional status, and so I wanted to know why they were leaving. I knew that it was not a situation where they did not have their contracts renewed because they weren't chosen to be rehired. So I just wanted to make that point of clarification because I think we're talking about apples and oranges, and so I just wanted to see if that would help clarify anything.
It goes to the heart of the non-public discussion.
Right, and that's the point. There are employment law things that we can't pass over, and so again, we are not at odds, and this is not meant to be contentious. We're hearing you, genuinely hearing you. I mean, Rebecca and I emailed all weekend together. We're hearing you, and I've talked to the board member. We're going to look into this, but please, I understand what you're saying, that she's at Brookline. If you want to talk about your public input, by all means. If you're going to read the letter, that is not allowed per our policy. That's the end of the discussion on it.
She can read the dictionary if she so chooses. This is a public input session. Ms. Gordon has proved that she can read.
I'm telling you, if that starts being read, we will close public input.
You haven't voted yet to close it, but she's already standing there. It's too late.
This is ridiculous. You guys this is ridiculous. This is adversarial. I'm telling you. And we're trying to, and we're going to. Okay, come on. Do you want... We're not doing our jobs now. Do you see what you've just created? Do you see the environment you're creating right now? We are listening to you for... Okay. Public input's done. Thank you.
Principal's report.
We hear you and appreciate... If you would like to talk about something other than that letter, by all means, but... Please, yes.
So I'm Julia Fries. I live at 24 Laurel Crest Drive. And I just want to first say thank you to the Brookline School District, Mr. Molinari, and Charlene in the office, and Ms. Farwell. Last year, I moved my children from out of state on a dime's notice, and within less than a week, they accepted my two children into the school with loving arms, and it was a really difficult transition for my kids. I was worried about this year for my son who was entering first grade, and he went into Miss Gordon's first grade class and had a wonderful year. I couldn't be more happy with the education he had and the experience, and I just want to give my support to Miss Gordon. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm diagnosed with complex PTSD. So I get stressed out and I forget stuff. It's part of my stuff. And I had one last thing that I'd like to say, and I promise I'm not trying to be contentious or inflate this situation, but again, to speak to the issues that are going on and the concerns about the culture within the school, I started to speak about my son and his behavior issues. He does have an IEP. He's at many, many meetings. And my younger son also has an IEP and has had many, many meetings. And the two big things that I want to try to bring up is that one, like Rebecca's son, my older son, who's now in 2nd grade, is being pushed on to 3rd grade, and though he's also only reading at a kindergarten level. I don't blame anybody in the school for what's going on right now. What I see again is a really epic disparity in resources, but also my youngest son, Avedis, was recommended to be held back before all of a sudden it became almost impossible to get a child held back a grade in the school. So my concern there is why? Why? You know, I've got an 8-year-old who has diagnoses all over the map, who's testing, 2 grades below level, and I can't request to have him held back a grade. Why? Clearly the need is there, and it's better to do these things when a child is younger as opposed to when a child is older. So why force my child into another grade where he's going to struggle even more, and struggle even more with self-esteem issues, right? The difference between my younger son, Avedis, and my older son, Zavan, in terms of how quickly they got their IEPs and had issues, is that his teacher, Lauren Ruda, has been with the district for like 25 years. She's tenured. And Zavan, my older son, didn't really need any support in terms of getting nominated for 504s and IEPs because his behavior advocates for himself. But I'm hearing all of these things and I'm being asked to say, why was my youngest son, who was advocated for a 504 and an IEP by a tenured teacher, why was that handled differently than these other children? That's it.
Thank you. We're going to move on now. Okay. Anyone else? Please.
I would just say that there's a lot of people that do want to speak to you, but they're afraid to come into a public setting. I think it would be a great idea for you guys to create maybe like a day or two where you had time set aside where the board was together, where parents could walk in and just talk to you. I'm not as afraid to speak in public, but there are some people that are just, they're afraid of retaliation, quite frankly. And I think it's a great idea for you guys to maybe think of doing something like that so you can make some sound decisions based on as much information as possible.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to close with it. I mean, that got heated for a second. We are hearing you, and I want that to be loud and clear because we are not at odds, and we're not, anyone wants to email the board, we will listen and hear everything you have to say. I've made notes. We've requested the non-public tonight so we can get into detail on this. So we're committing that we're going to look into this. So I just want to make sure that's when you walk out of here, that's what you're hearing. And it's not the brief moment where, I'm sorry, as a chair, I have to follow the policy too. And you may not agree with me, and I respect that, and that's okay, but that's part of the role that I sit in, and I have to do that. But I appreciate your feedback. We appreciate your feedback, and we will look into this. And this is certainly something the board's going to take on. So thank you.
I just wanted to quickly say, and I think that's a great idea, what Melissa's asking, because I heard from a lot of parents who said that they would have come, but they were worried about possible retaliation. And I think one of the things is when you are speaking, when you have a cultural issue like this, where it's more of a cultural issue, and how people feel and not exactly what's said, it is important I think one of the things that concerned me most recently was that I was told that after the teachers union no confidence vote was made, that the principal went around to all of the classrooms and stood for a period of time in each of the classrooms, which the teachers saw as an intimidation thing, and then also went and talked to each of them if they complained about their lunch or their planning time being infringed on. And if their lunch and planning time was infringed on, they were put on a list, and then they were questioned by the principal after that vote of no confidence was made. And so I think teachers, as well as students and parents, we worry about retaliation or other types of things.
I just need to clarify. I met with the union president. There was never a vote of no confidence. I met with her just last Thursday because I heard that rumor, and there has never been a vote from our union of no confidence.
Well,
So that
there's
is-
a vicious rumor going around this whole...
Well, that's why I want to address it right now.
There's a
'cause
vicious rumor going around that there is a vote of no confidence by the teachers union, and then also that when the lunch and planning time, the teachers who complained about lunch or planning time being infringed on were talked to, which could be seen as a form of retaliation because they were questioned as to why they brought that up. And then also every single classroom was visited where the principal just stood and mind you, I mean, I have no personal issues whatsoever. It's more of a process and community and culture and all of that and process for these things that is very concerning.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that, I mean, first of all, my son had Mrs. Maluski. We're all parents in this district, and we hear you on that. That was a huge loss. So I think the only way we're going to resolve any of these problems is if we work together and we understand that we're all on the same page with that and that we're committed to change. What I'm not committed to is making accusations without facts. And we're put in an unfortunate situation of not being able to respond to some of these because of legal reasons. So I just
One thing to say that will add to that. Do you think it's possible that as a board, you could be present during some of these evaluations so that way it doesn't feel like it's just one versus the other? There's a second set of eyes? I mean...
I don't think board members are allowed because that's...
Or the superintendent? I mean, it seems like it's just he said, she said. There needs to be a check and balance.
There are always two administrators, and they're always allowed to have a union rep with them. That's by contract. I mean, when you talk about the union, please trust me. The Brookline Teachers Union is a strong union. If we weren't following policies and procedures, we would hear about it, and the board would hear about it. And I'm very concerned because I meet with the union presidents on a regular basis. There has not been any vote of no confidence. So if that's... No, I know that, but I just want to clarify that.
Checks and balance.
But this is part of the problem.
An area that could help.
I agree, and we will take this very seriously. We're having a non-public. I'm happy to address things, but I think part of the piece, as our board member was stating, we don't get to provide, what I'll say, all the information because of some of the laws that we have to follow. So I appreciate everybody coming out, and I thank everybody.
I just gotta speak to that, I think just with Facebook and all I think we really, really need to think about another forum. Not even the retaliation piece, but just coffee with the board, just something to get people who are not engaged, not maybe just so we can get to know you besides just, it's always the same faces here usually at the board meetings. So I know, so I just think we need to get that. I spoke to Dan even about this a couple weeks, that community piece needs to be built back, and there's a lot of new families in town, and I think we need to make them feel comfortable. I think that is a key piece that's missing, so it doesn't get to this point where we even have a scuffle. You know what I mean? Ken's my neighbor. I don't know, I'm not going to come here and yell at Ken, because I got to the bus stop all the time. But,
Not for another 2
we
months.
just need to treat each other with respect. Remember, we're all neighbors, and I think we just need to think about another piece to add to make other people feel more comfortable, who don't feel comfortable walking in that door and making noise. I don't mind coming in here, but some people don't want to, and I think we need to be respectful of that. So, thank you. I just need to think about that.
Thank you. I promise I'll be quick. I promise I'll be quick. So I just want to say a few things. One, I'm really glad to see so many people here tonight. There's a few of you in the audience who are like usually the only one or two here. And I know people probably are watching at home, but it really means a lot to me to see members of our community involved in this process and giving us feedback. The other thing I wanted to say was in response to what Melissa asked for. And I'm not sure, like, if we can hold ad hoc meetings. I don't think we can. But one thing that I've talked to a few parents about, and I'm just trying to get through the end of the school year and stuff, is I would like to just on my own, like, host like a listening session with parents, because I do know that there are a lot of special education concerns. And being a parent of a child who's had an IEP and a child who's had a 504, one who, thanks to a teacher at CSDA, really was able to blossom because of the disability that they detected. So it's very important to me to make sure that special education concerns are addressed. And so when I can figure out the best time to do it, I will post something on the Brookline Facebook page, like maybe just announcing a time where people can just come and share their stories with me, because I really do want to hear that. And then the last thing I wanted to say was in response to what Steve said about fruit trees. You went someplace completely different than where I was going with that when I started to think about it. When we moved into our house in Brookline, there was a tree that looked like a pear tree. We moved in 2014. It was just in this side garden. I really had no idea what it was. Nobody knew what it was. Oh, it's just ornamental. 3 years ago, we picked up 2 trees on the buy one, get one free at Lavoie's at the end of the year in Hollis, a cherry tree. After we planted the cherry tree, an amazing thing happened. The pear tree started growing fruit. So sometimes it's cutting down the tree before it gets to bear fruit, and in other times, it's surrounding the tree with the resources it needs so that it can bear fruit. And so I just wanted to say that I really appreciated that analogy, and I think that we need to make sure that everyone, our administrators, our paraprofessionals, our teachers, that everyone has the resources around them to bear fruit.
Along that thread of resources, it was brought up the disparity with other districts. I'm not saying that any result or actions will result in any kind of budgetary changes, but if there are, this passion is great. Show up at our deliberative session. It's typically the first week of February. That's where the budget's presented, things that are going in are up for feedback, and people can change the budget on the floor and they can cut things. So when you go to the polls in March, you may be voting for a reduced budget or resources that have been removed. So really show up, get your friends, come find out what's going to be presented, what's in the budget, and you can amend it on the floor, up or down, and be involved in that. It's really important.
That was one of the big things. So we appreciate the passion, and I would ask you to be vocal about this throughout the year, especially during the budget season. We are about $4.5 million of a reduced budget compared to Hollis, is the reality. So there is a disparity. That's just facts. We've had a tougher climate of getting things through. For those that were involved 2 weeks ago, getting the RMS expansion was quite a thing, and you know what happened there. So appreciate that. I would absolutely encourage feedback and emails. The 5 of us can't sit together legally because it's a board meeting, so we'll have to figure out something with that. But hear your feedback. But when there's 3 or more, it becomes a quorum, and there's policies that dictate that. So we hear you on that too. Taking some notes, and again, appreciate all the. Please, you're welcome to come as many times as you want, as few as you want. You're welcome to email, but I do appreciate the outpouring of support as well. And I guess I have to say this. Some of this, until Friday, was a bit of a surprise to even myself as well. And I just have to say that because there was some other misinformation I think that was out there around our board too that was not the fact. But what I am committing to you is that we are going to look into this now, and thank you for your time this evening. So we will talk about that after. We have multiple things to go through here, and then we have a non-public at the end of the evening where we will take all of this feedback and discuss in greater depth. Okay, thank you. So now we are moving along to our principal's report.
I just have a question. That's it.
Sure.
Just a question. So you spoke that the difference in budget and policies was huge. Like, I've never stood in the field before the players, really none of this stuff, ever. What can we as parents and a concerned community do to support you in remedying that?
I think this is a good step, talking about more resources and having others come and continuing that's what we need. I mean, we would love more resources. We've tried to walk the line of budget conscious and more resources, but I can tell you there's no one sitting up here that would turn away more resources.
Yeah, because I mean, again, that's really a huge disparity that I see. Again, I've seen 4 children in homes. I've seen 2 children in Brookline. And the difference in the budget and resources is insane. I'll tell you that in Brookline, the care, the individual attention, the commitment to the children in terms of the staff, like the investment that the Brookline Elementary School has put in my children as individual educators in my children is stunning. And the only thing that I see are people who really, really care, who are really, really struggling, and it's because they don't have the funding that they need.
Thank you. Okay, are we ready for the principal's report?
Yes, good evening. So the first thing I want to share is on the enrollment history at the last meeting. Just asked what the enrollment was at the start of the year, compared to now. So we just did a year-over-year analysis of that and put a table at the top of the report just so you can have that information so you can see since 2014, 2015, those trends over the last few years.
And then below that, we have the Brookline enrollment to date for 21-22 academic year. We've also chose a total of 594 students, and then we also showed a projection as of June 15th for the 22-23 academic year. They're pretty consistent. The big glitch right now, or difference, I should say, not a glitch, the projected total is 566. And right now, we're seeing a projection right now for kindergarten of almost 60 students compared to our 80 from this year. So that may change in the next month or so.
That's a good job.
And also the board had, we have an updated staff structure for the projected staffing for 22-23 school year. And on that list, I think there's an updated one going around. We have the bold are those staff that are currently working here, but they change positions. They just went to a different position. They might have moved from a case manager to a teacher or vice versa. And then the underlying are the new staff. So we're excited to share this peer review report with all of you, to just go through some of the highlights and what we're looking forward to for the 22-23 school year. And as you can see in that first photo, we've got the Wings of Blue Jay and the mascot, the new mascot that was purchased by the PTO for CSTA.
Whiskers.
Okay. So our first item we want to share is school safety. And this is an area that we started the school year off with, and it's our most important. We want to make sure all the students are safe in our buildings. And we go through, each building has a building safety team, and in the district we also have a district health and safety committee. We look at all of our drills and our practices, and we also go through an audit every 3 years for school safety through the New Hampshire Home try to fund those or use grant money to make improvements around our facility. In the last few years, at both buildings, we've added a door enunciation panel, so anytime a door is open, it blinks, so we know that it's open. We also improved our security camera systems in both buildings, so those are just some improvements that we've done in the last few years. As you can see in the grid here, this is the overview of what we did this year. At both RMS and CSA, we met and exceeded the number of expected drills. For the state, we were expected to do 6 evacuation drills and 4 annexes, and we met that and went above that. And in addition, we were excited at RMS in particular, in the past prior to the pandemic, we used to have a safety official, so fire, police, EMS come and have lunch with our students on Fridays. So we were able to bring that back in April, and it was just a nice turnaround to see. So it was a welcome change, and the students and the safety officials really enjoyed those days. So we're excited to bring that back. And I can't thank our teachers and our students at both buildings for the work that they do. When we do perform a drill, the safety officials have nothing but accommodation for how we perform them, and how efficient and how well versed everybody is. And it takes a lot of work and practice on the teacher's end, and a lot of planning as well by the safety committee. So it's just an area we continue to make improvements with, and we're very proud of that. Here.
Then we were talking, we have our academics, but along with our academics, we also try to have some fun. So we do some great different field trips or virtual field trips as well. So this year at RMS, they were able to have their field day. They have the Plymouth State University Tiger performance come to the school. They have the Scholastic Book Fair, the spring concert, which I know a lot of families enjoyed seeing the students perform. Grade kindergarten had the Friendly Farm field trip, and grade 1 at the Swan Lake Science Center. Grade 2 had the visit from the Mystic Aquarium, and grade 3 being the Junos. And at CSDA, we were able to have our turkey trot, which was really the first really fun thing that we had, and I had heard about it when I was, being interviewed 2 years ago, so I was really excited to have that, so I will be bringing it next year. 6th grade, we just had our graduation, so that was a wonderful success. I think families really enjoyed that as well. The students were thrilled to practice and bring those chairs out, and they really liked the idea that the 5th graders got to have the tradition of bringing the chairs back in the next day. That's kind of their passage of time to get to 6th grade. We had also our Scholastic Book Fair. We had a great field day. Grade 4 had a virtual tour of the Freedom Trail, talking about the colonial period up to the Revolutionary War, and it just was a fantastic virtual field trip. We also had 5th grade, the Swan Lake wildlife animal handlers came and visited outside to tie in with their science curriculum. And we had that with their anti-bullying assembly back in February, again sponsored along with the PTO, so we appreciate that. And then 6th grade had a wonderful time with some parent volunteers here to visit their egg smash dash crash. So that was a wonderful part of their science and math cross-curriculum.
In these next few slides, we're going to share our themes updated. So the first slide is kindergarten, and with these graphs, we show the fall reports and the spring reports for both ELA and math. For kindergarten, we're excited to share. So in the green, that's our tier 1, that's our whole group, all students in the class. The yellow is the tier 2, and tier 3 is the red. The tier 2 range, the yellowish area, those are students that usually receive intervention services from reading specialists and math specialists. And in the red area, a lot of those students are either an intervention or our services through their IEP. So we're excited to share for ELA. For kindergarten, we made a 57% movement increase in the tier 1 range from fall to spring. That's wonderful growth. And then for math, we had a 50% movement change from the tier 1 ranges. And as you'll see in the slide from K to 3, you'll see more and more of the green, which is just a tribute to the work and the hard work of our addition, we have frequent meetings, so we meet 2 to 3 times a year on top of our weekly PLCs to discuss students. So we're constantly reviewing data, observations in the classroom, just to make any changes in the learning profiles for our students. The next slide, we have grade 1. There was an 88% movement increase in tier 1 from the fall to spring in ELA, followed by 72% movement in math. So just tremendous growth all the way through. In grade 2, we had a 57% movement increase in tier 1 ranges from the fall to spring ELA, and we had an 80% movement increase for math. And then for grade 3, as you can see here, just more and more green, we had a 6% increase from the tier 1 range for ELA and 19% increase.
For grade 4, we had, for ELA, we had a 17.6% increase from the fall to the spring. Again, for the tier 1 improvement. And math, we had 18.75% increase. For grade 4, from ELA, we had a 17.6% increase, and in math, we showed 18.4%. For grade 5, for ELA, we showed 11.4% in fall to spring, and in math, we showed a 56% increase. So the more green, again, we're very proud of the teachers and the support that they provide. But most importantly, we're so proud of the students. They get to see that growth after they take the like testing and follow the computer. They get to ask the teachers, how did I do? How well did I do? And in some cases, they're able to see, oh my goodness, I answered 4 questions, I got 4 right. I did some proctoring for some students that may have been absent and really didn't complete the test. And so they were excited to do it. And they're not, real long tests like the state standardized. But this also gives teachers a snapshot to see how all the students are doing. And we will gather that data so that next year's students, students coming in, the teachers will have that data as far as what the how the students did in the fall, students how they did in the spring, and then they'll be able to compare that as they're at the next level in the fall.
Does this data get translated up to the middle school and the co-op district? I mean, how is this, does it stop K through 6 and then they have their own metrics, or does this AIMSWeb continue on there?
AIMSWeb does not continue up at the middle school. There, other than the localized assessments and then the New Hampshire South for 7th grade, they delay until 8th grade when we do the PSAT 8-9.
So at RMS, the past 4 to 5 years, we have a food pantry project that we've been very proud of, that our students in mostly grade 3, but throughout the school, work with our math specialist, Mrs. Winters, to donate food. And we want to thank the families in Brookline and also our teachers for the support of this. But this past year, we were able to provide close to 1,800 meals for families in our town and surrounding towns due to the work of the families in Brookline and the students that calculate out this. And then we transfer that to the food pantry that's at the basement level of our town hall. So thank you, Mrs. Winters, our grade 3 students who calculate all this and work on this and the families.
And we continue this year with some open positions, grade 2, grade 3 position, we'll need a custodian, 3 special education paraeducators, 2 MTSS paraeducators. At CSDA, we are still down a custodian, a special education paraeducator, special education case manager, and 2 MTSS paraeducators. We will also need a school psychologist. This year, we had to contract for a school psychologist.
If you wouldn't mind, just explain the MTSS. I know there's been requests that we explain some of the acronyms that we're used to.
MTSS is the multi-tiered system of support those, for instance, which you talked about the 3 tiers, that we just showed the names with, those are the different levels of tiers of support.
For RMS this summer, just some projects that we're looking forward to. In the coming weeks, we'll be inviting families of those students who are incoming first, second, and third, who are receiving interventions this school year to participate in our virtual summer learning academy. This is something that we did last summer as well. We were fortunate enough to have some grant funds to provide that, especially with the learning loss that happened due to COVID. So this is something we're looking to target again. Hollis is also doing the same. We're just going to be beginning soon our project, the facility project, with the ADA compliant elevator, entryway security. We've got some new classroom flooring. Room 15 is the library, which is now going to be split into 2 classrooms, 2 third grade classrooms. So that'll be getting a new classroom floor along with room number 35 and 36, which is both preschool classrooms. We also have the parking lot reseal and over the 4th of July week. We are expecting the company to do 2 coats of a reseal in our parking lot of both RMS and CSD, so those parking lots will be not usable during those weeks. And we also have some trim and gutter work that will be done this summer at RMS.
And at CSDA, due to construction that's taking place at RMS, we are having or hosting the extended school year program here at CSDA. We're also having the before and after school program. Their summer camps are taking place here. As Dan mentioned, the parking lot reseal. We were also removing the carpets. The carpet is 22 years old in 6 specials rooms. Those are where case managers as well as guidance and speech are taking place. So we'll be replacing that direction of the floor instead of the carpet. And we are working, it's on a rotational basis. We're going to be working on the exterior classroom door replacements. Those are the ones that we showed several months ago. They were actually rusting in the frames. So those will be expensive replacements, but we're going to start working on that. And again, we're also going to be doing some paving and some in the backyard on the sides of the building for ADA.
So I'm excited to show this slide because looking ahead to 22 to 23, we're going to really look to get our families back into the building again. Obviously, due to COVID, we have those restrictions. Some of the hallmarks of our school were the family events again. So, in-person open house will be happening in the fall. I believe it's September 8th for RMS. So we're excited to have our families back and come into the classroom, see what the kids' classrooms look like because we haven't been into the other classrooms. We're also looking at bringing in program. It's called the Box Program, and it's a fitness type activity where students come before school twice a week. It's like a 6-week program in the fall. Happens in the spring as well. They participate in outdoor activities, so it's yoga. We might do some running, just some physical activity, get their bodies moving, ready for the school day. Something we're trying to implement this year with some grant funds that we have, and we do have 2 to 3 teachers that are excited to run this program as well. So prior to COVID, we used to do monthly or every 2 months we do a night assembly. We would have a STEM night, a math night, a reading night. We did a writers festival. We also had a class event where we would have some student writing accompanied by some grade level performance from music. And those are just some really fun nights that brought the families in. They could see some of the highlights of their students' work. Some of the families here in the audience and some of the members of the board have had experience with those, so we're excited to bring some of those night events, and we're looking to bring an author in the fall at one of our literacy family nights. And then also we're looking at doing more of our school-wide assemblies. So at the school-wide assemblies, when we're able to all congregate together, we would go over some rules for the month or expectations for the month. We're looking at maybe some skits from lessons that I learned from the guidance class and bring those in and show them school-wide, so we can show what cooperative play looks like. What is bullying? Just talking about expectations and being a kind friend to others. So
exposed to that yet, but I know I've heard great things about the grade 6 science. We also maybe will be able to encourage the student and family turkey talk. Maybe I can work with the PTO on that. Something that would really bring the community together. And again, as Dan was mentioning, we'll also be continuing or start the school-wide assemblies on a monthly basis. And I've already spoken with teachers about that. Basically, what we would like to do after grades 4, 5, and 6 is really have them driven by the students themselves, obviously with guidance, direction, and support. But we'd really like them to help develop it. And they will be associated with the Choose Love theme of each month. Again, on how to be kind and be a member of the community. Also for Hollis Brookline District, we were looking into possibly having some type of STEM fair. And we're also announcing that we have secured Flint Lions as we're going to present do a presentation on August 30th for both the Hollis and Brookline community. And she is a specialist on a licensed therapist, but she specializes in anxiety with children and families and school communities. So we'll certainly get information out to both communities and provide a flyer and information about that. But it's something that we hope that all families will, parents will come, as well as teachers and other community members. If you haven't seen or heard her, she is a phenomenal speaker, and she just gives, as she says, rational thoughts about children and anxiety and interaction, how we work as a family, families and schools work together as a community. She's a great presenter, so that's something that we look forward to. And then these are just a snapshot of some of the pictures of some of the great fun community things that we did in school, and we have some parent volunteers there for some of the great activities that took place with the students.
And similarly for RMS, just some highlights from the school year. You'll see at the top is this Long Lakes presentation, student celebrating Passion Day, our great community. Those are some of the highlight pictures from the school. And then that last image is of whiskers and wings and bowls. We're running bowls for the event, and then that's an overview of our 2022 field day. Thank you. Any questions for active? Thank you.
I have a question, sorry. When you guys have the going back to the safety portion and you do the drills and the lockdowns and all that, if you've ever had an actual lockdown, a shelter in place, do you ever discuss or have any mention with the children a reasoning behind it? So I'm in the schools part-time, not these schools, but other schools in the area. And what I have seen is then on several different occasions, they've had actual lockdowns or shelters in place for various things. And the paranoia that comes out of kids when that happens and it's not part of a drill, but it can be a really simple reason. So for example, we were in a lockdown and it was a medical emergency and they had just locked everybody in the room so that the EMTs could do what they needed to do and get people out. But by the time I saw a kid right after that, there was a knife-wielding guy running through the halls, stabbing people with FBI sitting outside. So because the paranoia gets so high, these kids spread rumors like wildfire. This was literally a kid had a medical emergency and needed to be evacuated. So what I was noticing though was that if we had just simply said to them, this is just a medical emergency, just stay in your room so that we can do what we need to do, and that would have allayed the fears. Like I could look out the window and go, yeah, everybody's still playing on the playground. Clearly there's not anything really serious going on. But those kids, they're in these lockdowns all the time, they're in these drills, And it is traumatic for all of them. It's something we didn't grow up with, and, you know, this is where I go to because this is my line of work. So just a thought for if you do have them, and there is a simple explanation, somehow passing that on to the kids to alleviate anxiety and stress, if that's a possibility.
Yeah, just so you know, at CSDA, I've asked all of the teachers, you know, I will let them know anyways, but they are required to sit with their class, and myself and the guidance counselor will, you know, go around if necessary, or teachers feel that, you know, they need to have a follow-up, and I'll come in and talk to the students myself as well with the teacher. But we will explain, there's a chart that the teacher has to go over each of the types of drills. So, you know, we will say, okay, listen, this month we're gonna have a fire drill, let's go out and practice, but usually we'll have fire drills the first week or so of school anyways, because it's good weather and we're required to do so many of them. So the teachers will speak with their students, explain what the drill is, what the expectation is, and then they'll go outside and line up as if it was the drill, so they'll be prepared for it, know what the expectation is, and so that wouldn't be fair. We also tie in with, for instance, any incoming fourth graders, if there's any high level of anxiety for a student, that, you know, the sound of the alarm, that really kind of terrifies some students, just a loud noise. So we'll have a list of the names of those students for grades 4, 5, and 6. So I will know to let the teachers, you know, listen, we're having a drill at approximately 10:15, tell that student so they know what to expect. Or we need to have that student outside before the alarm goes off. So we'll make those accommodations as necessary. As far as lockdown drills, we do practice those. And again, we speak about them probably the week before we actually have the drill. And so if the students have any questions. If we did have any medical emergencies or something like that, you know, we've had some situations this year in particular where we did have to have a lockdown, or not lockdown, emergency medical situation. And basically, as we do with all our drills, we just simply speak regular verbiage, I guess you would say, and simply say, listen, everyone, you know, this is a drill, or this is not a drill. I really need you to stay in your classroom. If you're in the bathroom or if you're in the hallways, please go to the nearest classroom, and then I'll explain what happened or what's going on. That we just need you to clear the hallways for a few minutes. Somebody might be having a difficult time, or there might be someone might have gotten sick in the hallway. We just leave it as simple as that. And then if there's questions, then the teachers will call me and I'll come down and speak to them, to the students, to kind of give them a little more clarification.
That's awesome, because that's far more than other schools in the area are doing, I will say that.
Yeah, and I'll be honest
by a long
with you,
shot.
And I think, you know, Dan and I, we work so closely with the police and fire department in Brookline, and just in other trainings that we've had, basically they said the clearer you present the information, the less fear and anxiety. So.
And then the other question I had was, have we looked into, or do we not qualify, because maybe we have, any grants for the MTSS positions? Because I know, like Hudson, for example, and Merrimack right now have MTSS positions filled because of grants. And I was wondering if we maybe don't qualify, or?
We don't qualify for a lot of grant funding. However, those positions are fully funded in our budget. We are just unable to hire for them.
So it's really just a hiring process issue?
And availability of staff.
What's the kind of qualifications of somebody that we'd be looking for in that?
Are you looking to?
Is it like more of a teacher type of a position, or are you looking for more of a bachelor's level?
A bachelor's level is perfect.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
I just have a question on the enrollment piece. I hadn't digested it yet, so I'm sorry that we're going back a minute. We have a pretty good drop from kindergarten to first grade of 97 to 80. That's not a typo, that's real. We have a 17 student dip that occurs from this year to next year for K to 1. No, I get the I get kindergarten for 60 right now. I was going to follow up on that, but I'm looking at that table below. So 21, 22 shows for right now in kindergarten. Oh, that's NESDEC says 97, and we're at 80. Thank you. Okay, got it.
Because of that drop, we did reduce the kindergarten section from 5 teachers to 4.
Okay. And then the 60, what is the time period where we start really feeling, is this an 80% confidence interval, 90% confidence interval right now?
So I didn't have to put 5 students in that we usually get. So right now we're 55. I had 5 more.
Okay.
Generally. So we're about 55 right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All the other ones are actually based on.
Right. Yeah, thank you. We good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. So now at this point, we move over to a discussion section. We have 5 topics tonight. The first one is around suicide prevention plan.
Yeah, that's coming. Good evening. Was that me? Oh. Take 2. Can I move this to the side? Good evening. This presentation will provide an overview of our suicide prevention and response plan, which is also included in your packet. The framework of our suicide prevention and response plan comes from RSA 193J, which went into effect July 2020. However, even without this RSA, students' social emotional needs and well-being are always at the forefront of our work as a school district. In order to create this plan, we use the 4 elements that our practices need to address per the RSA. This includes annual training, education for students, crisis prevention resources, and partnerships with community organizations. A key component to student well-being is positive relationships and engagement. Adults in the building work with students to foster positive relationships and build on student strengths both in and out of the classroom. The schools utilize the multi-tiered system of supports process to allow time for staff to discuss student concerns and to consider input from a variety of stakeholders. This includes classroom teachers, school counselors, special educators, service providers, nurses, and administration. This practice supports a more holistic view of the student and their needs. And what we heard tonight, both from the staff and the work that they do, the work that's done as a community and the schools as a whole, that speaks to this positive engagement that the students, feel and the care that the staff in the district feel for the students. Educating staff begins at the start of each new academic year. The school counselor will review the building's safety protocol with the staff. The safety protocol is included in your packet, so you'll see what that looks like, and I'll go through that here tonight. The staff learns when and how to follow this protocol, under what conditions the protocol needs to be followed. In alignment with RSA 193J, staff are trained annually, and we use the NAMI Connect program, which meets the requirements through the RSA. There are Brookline school district staff members who are currently trainers, so they'll train the staff each year. We all must be aware of potential warning signs. Therefore, the safety protocol chart will be included in every classroom for teachers to easily reference in the moment. They could have it in their desks and in their classrooms, so they can reference it as needed. Student education is just as important as staff education. School counselors work with students through curriculum when they push into the classrooms to meet with the classes. Lesson plans and curriculum do include friendship, mindfulness, anger management, problem solving, challenging negative thoughts. These are just some examples of some of the work the school counselors do with the students. Fostering the community and student engagement within the school helps the student feel connected. And again, we heard a little bit about this tonight. These do serve as preventative measures as well, and they are included building-wide. So we've heard about the assemblies, we've heard about the field trip and the programs and the different forms of engagement throughout the school year. We are working on compiling resources to be available to families when needed. A brochure is also in development to be distributed as needed to families if there is any level of concern or need. This includes building contact information, outside resources for safety assessments, and some guiding information regarding potential warning signs for self-harm. So I know we've seen this triangle a few times tonight in different realms, and we've seen it for some of the academic data that we've reviewed. When we look at the multi-tiered system of supports, we're looking at this for academic growth, for social emotional needs, and we look at this in level of response to any signs, any warning signs that we're seeing for our students. So when we look at tier 1 in this realm, we're looking at, again, what do we do as a whole school or a community to support our students and help them feel engaged and involved and connected to the staff and to each other. And some of the examples here are the activities, the before and after school pieces, the classroom community, the assemblies, everything we've talked about so far. When we meet as a data team and we look at some potential warning signs from those stakeholders we talked about earlier, we may reach out to students for that tier 2 level of need, building in check-ins with the school counselor on a more frequent basis, providing different options. Again, these are just some examples based on student need. Maybe they need quiet lunch, maybe they need some breaks, maybe they need extra connection with adults, and we find the best adult to connect to the students. Tier 3 supports could involve school psychology services. There may be referrals to the Section 504 or to the special education process in this realm. Should a student express an intent to harm themselves or others, the safety protocol is followed. This slide provides an overview of the process, which is outlined in greater details in your packet. Once an intent is expressed, the school counselor and administrator will meet with the student to hear what the student is feeling. Parents are called and they come in to meet with the school counselor and administrator, who explain that the student needs to be seen by a licensed mental health practitioner before returning back to school. Resources and phone numbers are provided to the family if the family does not currently work with an outside therapist or if their current therapist is not available. Upon the practitioner's clearance, the student will return to school, and a re-entry meeting is scheduled to meet again with the school counselor and the administration to talk about what supports may be needed within the school setting, and I'll go into that in greater detail in a slide. This is a chart that kind of breaks down the mental health practitioners and the resources that we do provide to families. So the parent can take a student off-site and see a private mental health practitioner. It could be in-person, telehealth, whatever the arrangements are. There are also resources for mobile crisis, and these phone numbers are included in the packet, and I do have them also in the brochure that we're developing. And what this is it's a mobile crisis mental health unit that could come to the school building when the parent is present meeting with the administration and school counselor. This mobile crisis can also go to the home and work with the family there. So there's a couple of different options. There's also emergency rooms, urgent care, walk-in clinics. The re-entry meeting that I mentioned earlier begins the post-vention process. The school counselor, administrator, parents, and student meet to discuss the practitioner's recommendations and any needs the student may have returning back to school. A release may be signed for a school counselor to speak to an outside therapist to discuss potential supports that we can provide in the school environment in order to really bridge that support from home to school. Regular check-ins with the school counselor are often part of the re-entry plan. Depending on the severity of the need, a referral may be made to Section 504 or special education. If the student already has one of those plans in place, it may be recommended that the team meet to discuss any needs that could be developed through those processes. This process is an important one as we work to support our students and families at this foundational level. As we look, to talk about this at an elementary school level, it's a lot to kind of wrap your head around. But what we look for here is that wrap around to the students to really recognize any warning signs and to, again, build that connection with themselves and the staff and themselves and each other in order to, have them safely go through the school. As we move forward, we continue to evolve and strengthen our prevention opportunities and our Tier 1 and 2 connection and education for our students. And I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
I just have, I just had a couple, or just comments. I think this is great. I think eventually districts realize that, and we might have this, not only do we need suicide prevention, but we also need, and I hate to use the term, but homicide prevention, so that teachers know
that to take seriously if a student is not only joking about hurting themselves, but joking about, so if we could expand that at some point, I think
Sure.
that would be, because we can make assumptions that everybody knows that, but sometimes that, in my experience, doesn't bear out. I just had a thought about the fact that this is a K-6 building, and I know unfortunately suicides are occurring at a younger rate, so we have to address it. But, and I think I know the answer to this, but all staff should be told that that suicide protocol should be kept hidden from the students. They don't need to be reading it. Curious, bored students.
Correct.
Some of them will.
Yeah.
Okay. The MTSS meetings, it says that they're held regularly. How regularly are those happening, or does it vary?
It varies
based
by
on need?
building.
Okay. And I guess the rest of my just thoughts on this are that the suicide prevention is the tail end of, really what we need to do, which is we need kids to have social emotional learning. And although I know that's sometimes a hot political issue, if we don't deal with that at the tier 1 level, and it sounds like we are, but I think the community needs to know that we are dealing with that, then we are going to have this. We're going to deal with bullying, we're going to deal with suicides. Eventually, as the kids get older, we're going to deal with kids with weapons, safety issues. So I just want to reiterate that this is great, but that we also need a comprehensive social emotional learning program that addresses this at tier 1. It's more important now than ever. Kids are struggling through the pandemic. We don't have enough staffing. Teachers sound like they're struggling, so I just wanted to, and I hear choose love, but at some point I'd love for the community to know how that's being implemented. Is it being implemented with fidelity? Because if it's not implemented with fidelity, it's wonderful, but probably not as useful. So.
Absolutely, thank you. And, kind of just to piggyback on what you're saying a little bit, that's what really the goal is the prevention, right? That's what we're focusing on, that's what we're trying to work and to evolve and strengthen as we work with our students. To your point, it's very important that any comment is taken seriously because, again, there's always a fallback. I was joking, right? And that's something that we talk about as a staff and that we hear. And so we really work with the staff to understand that there is no joking comment, and that does go for the intent to harm yourself or someone else. The safety protocol is followed in both instances. It's not only self-harm. So that's important to distinguish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I hate to say it, but I'm using this all the time. So I work very closely with the teachers and the guidance counselors. And we take any type of situation when a student makes a comment very seriously. And we address it appropriately as well as with the families. And I think the fact that we've had our guidance counselor go into the classrooms as well as myself to talk about things as far as the generalities, as far as, you need to be kind to one another, this and that. But to take, think about what your friends are saying to you. If you, have a friend that might be sad or you're not sure why they're sad or something like that, especially as they, get to 5th or 6th grade, they do make comments to their teachers and, or report on other friends that they're concerned about. So we do address that and check in with that and check in with the families. So,
thank you.
It's been a great program, for the teachers and myself.
I had two questions. One to tail off Colleen. I was wondering if you could talk about how the Jessie Lewis Choose Love program is used as part of this program, because I don't see it mentioned. Because I think the community doesn't know. There's a group of parents who have connected Sandy Hook Promise and have started the process of being trained to use their program. So I'm like, oh my gosh, those are two Sandy Hook parents who've tried to come up with systems for schools to prevent not only school violence and mass shootings, but also the things that lead to that, whether they be suicide prevention or other social emotional learning. So I'm hoping you can speak about that And then the other thing I wanted to ask, I know that we have someone now at the district level who's kind of doing compliance and grant writing and all of this stuff. A community member brought to my attention through the Department of Education the New Hampshire School Safe Threat Assessment Micro Grant. It looks like it was posted in October of '21, but on the DOE site, it says that it's still open for applications. And from looking at that, it looked like what it does is it gives you some resources and some tools to do a community assessment of your building, and it builds on the MTSS system and helps put, instead of silos, it really looks to sort of build the team and wrap the community in support. So I would love to see if that is something that's still accepting applications and if that might be something useful for us.
I'll take, oh, go ahead, you go. As I throw the wire, sorry.
We have completed that process across the SAU as far as buildings, and we have Homeland Security here pretty much every summer.
Okay, but this is, I think this is different. This is the New Hampshire School Safe Threat Assessment Micro Grant, and it's not a Homeland Security thing. It's more a community thing. How, like, looking at a community assessment for what our strengths and weaknesses are, not from a building safety and security, but like an emotional, like, what are our weaknesses as a community, and how can we use the resources available to us to build on that?
Sure. So we did that with the Office of Student Wellness years ago, and we looked at our community resources, and that really gave us the jump start to put together our list of providers and categorize them and figure out, while our town might not have a whole lot, what towns and what resources do they have that we can easily reach out to and look to. So I will certainly look to see if there's a component that we didn't complete, but we did that 2018 maybe? Okay.
And there's some great questions that have you look within your building. So we did use it, we did hit the deadline.
Okay.
We saw the grant, we did do it internally.
Okay.
We didn't work with on the grant. Going back to your question, how choose levels. So every teacher does a little different, but for the most part, it's done during morning meeting times. Sometimes it's integrated, but it's integrated throughout the day. A lot of those necessarily components to choose love. We also have resources from the New Hampshire Department of Ed. They have several links and necessary resources that we pull from as well, in addition to choose love.
Okay. Just looking quickly, like, when you did your assessment last year, do you know, or do you have information, like Trish, you said you're using this all the time, like, is there ever more than 24 hours that passes between when you make a referral for a student to be evaluated by a licensed mental health provider and when they actually get that evaluation?
The requirement is that for us, we make that assessment, and we require that the student not return. And the request is that we're asking the parents to go and seek an evaluation immediately. So we provide them with names of resources and phone numbers, and typically we send them over into the national area.
And I guess my question is, are you hearing from parents that they're not able to do that within a timely manner?
There's been a couple where they actually contacted their general practitioner, and in most cases, they've been able to find someone, and Lauren had mentioned the mobile.
Yeah, that's a great addition.
And I know that has been utilized.
Awesome.
Say in the past month.
Awesome.
And also in Nashua, they just most recently opened up another location where they're guaranteed that they can actually walk in.
Oh, awesome.
To receive services immediately.
That's great. Thank you.
But to answer your question, there has been periods of time, and depending on, again, when we're looking at COVID, not COVID, that there were times. But if a parent called us and said, it's been a day, I'm trying, we'll make calls, we'll reach out to, the rapid response, the mobile crisis, the hospitals. So we'll help, to find those resources too for the parents. So it has been less and less, but there have been a few times, of course, where it's taken more than one day.
And it is a pretty it is a pretty comprehensive process because we do a risk assessment, we do a risk summary, and then upon re-entry to the school, we do a re-entry meeting. But going back to the mobile unit, it's a wonderful resource, but this past spring, there was a backlog to it. So there were days where
I mean, it's a crisis, obviously. It's a crisis, like, nationwide.
Yes, exactly.
Obviously.
Yeah, so 5 Pine Street Extension is what you're referring to, I'm assuming?
Wait, I'm so sorry, can you say that?
5 Pine Street Extension is the one I'm assuming you're referring to for mobile crisis walk-in?
For which extension?
At 5 Pine Street.
Oh, I think it is. I haven't used them yet. The 5 Pine Street, is that?
It's part of Greater Nashua.
Yes, I think that's where we've extended it.
And you do, so the system's changed, so you don't actually call in to Greater Nashua anymore. There's no, like, that 1-800 number to mobile crisis no longer exists. You now, just to let families know, you will dial in to a 1-800 number and you will go to Beacon, and Beacon will then transfer your call out to the next available resource. Correct. So you may or may not get somebody from Nashua, you might get somebody from Keene, you might get somebody from Manchester, depending on availability, but you should be able to get a mobile crisis evaluation done within 24 hours. That backlog happened at the changeover, where people couldn't reach Greater Nashua because they disconnected their 1-800 number, and it was a hot mess. One of the questions I have for you is, did you look into the legality of requiring that students must be seen by a mental health professional before being returned? Because we have heard in our building that is not a legally bound requirement, so that kids can return without, and I think that's something we need to be aware of.
Yep.
Yes. Can I comment on that just as somebody?
Sure.
I feel like, yes, you're right, that it is, but on the other hand, sometimes you're assessing risk of not breaking a law, but like having a family agree, this doesn't make sense for your child to be back here if he's not safe or she's not safe, with the harm of them coming into the building, and you do have to, but our policy does, correct, like the presentation mentions we do that, but yeah, I noticed that too. And I would appreciate it as a parent.
Right, exactly. And so to speak to Colleen's point, you know, it's a conversation and it's a discussion, and that's why the parents come in and they're involved in speaking with the school counselor and the administrator to really look at the big picture and look at this piece. As a practice for a school district, we stand by this practice that they be seen. And I have not, in my experience here, encountered any difficulty with that, because again, as a school and the community and with the parents, we're working together in that support, and really just understanding that that's what it is. It's not you need to not be here. It's, hey, let's look at what is going on with your student and how can we best support them, so that when they do come back, we have a wraparound with what's going on, you know, with them, and how we can bridge that support in the school and get recommendations and get some insight from a licensed mental health practitioner who can provide that clearance.
Okay, and two other things, sorry, pulling you guys up here, but the first is there an intent or an idea at some point to educate the parent population about warning signs for suicide? Because I know you're like, there's I don't want my kids to really know about suicide, but I do evaluations on 5-year-olds. So it is not unheard of, and it is way more common than you think. So having our parents have those tools and that knowledge would really be important, because there are warning signs my kids didn't even know about. So, like, having the parent population know about it and be educated in it is important. And having kids know about it is not a bad thing. It just isn't. Opening up conversations makes it less of a taboo and less scary. And then the other question I had was, is there a reason we have not used on-site Greater Nashua or Harbor Homes or or anybody else come into the school to offer, I understand that they're private care services and they were under insurance or Medicaid, but they can offer, I know they all link with services to offer student services within the school setting.
So again, in different buildings across the SAU, we have looked into that, and, you know, again, it's all, we take things on a case-by-case basis, on a circumstantial basis. We have used Harbor Homes and again, the mobile crisis, where they do come to the school setting for that risk assessment piece also. You know, this is an ever-evolving process, you know, so we'll decide as, you know, districts what will work best for the students in that moment. To go back to the education piece, I completely agree with you, and that's why we're building the resources that we are looking to have available on our website for community resources, different information. The brochure that we're developing now has a lot of that. How do you talk to your student? How do you talk as a family? You know, what are some things that we can look for, you know, in the home setting too, and provide that to families. So that's in the works. And if there's any other methods that we want to use as, you know, buildings or as a district, we'll explore those as well.
I was going to speak to, as you pointed out, that the training for staff and for volunteers is directed by RSA. I know that the training for a volunteer is quite onerous, and it feels like that as you go through it, but it is important that volunteers, at the end of the school year, people were allowed back into the building. And it's going to be more opportunity next year. So it's so important to go through that training, even though it is a lot. It's like 2 hours just on suicide prevention. But anybody that has eyes and ears in the building can be a resource to help teachers and administrators. So I just wanted to talk to that, and it's part of the education piece. And I hope people go through the training, because it'd be great to get volunteer certified people available for events that are hopefully going to be plentiful next year.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
All right, great. So our next review here, discussion is around curriculum update.
So this is less of a presentation and more of just a discussion. All right, so last school year, we had Fridays were early release, and our teachers worked together every Friday and focused on what they were seeing in the classroom and what they could do as grade level teams to work with the students given their needs, and take a look at the curriculum and see how and what would need to be tweaked. At the end of the 2021 school year, our teachers worked to provide specific details about our students and what strengths the students were demonstrating, and also some areas of need in terms of direct standards, so that information could be transferred to the receiving teacher. And so in the fall, the receiving teacher took a look at that, made some adjustments, understood how they would start the year, and then the boards approved for early release days throughout the year. And so as we went through the year, we continued to regroup as grade level teams, take a look at what the growth that they were seeing in the classroom, and then really do cross-references with the curriculum that they had all internally. And then what I had asked them to do was then take a look at all that curriculum work that they were doing on a more informal basis and formalize that for publicly facing documents with a focus on ELA and social studies, and really identifying what are absolutes that we're going to do and what are extras, what are some supporting documents. So I just want to do a little walkthrough. This is our SAU41.org website. And if you go over to curriculum, and over to curriculum by course, you can then see each of our school buildings, and I'm going to start with CSDA. And then you can take a look at grade 4, 5, 6, or physical education, which is for the school as a whole. And let's say I want to go to grade 5, and I want to take a look at social studies. So here is a very detailed description of grade 5 social studies. So it starts off with the school, then it goes to the grade level and the content area. It's broken down by units, and so I'm going to do a little bit of explaining of what these mean, just because it's second nature to teachers, but for non-educators, you might have some questions. So some common essential questions or learning. By the end of this unit, students will be able to talk about how the Native American Indians in their regions lived in shelters, hunted for different resources, and survived differently depending on where their region was located in the United States. And then what do we hope to get from that? So our content objectives are, by the end of this unit, students should have a familiarity with the following. So here are our objectives for the lesson. A lot of times you will have the teacher write that content objective up on the board for that unit so the students are aware of what it is that is expected of them by the end of the unit. Then you move down to the standards. So this is where we identify specifically our standards that, oops, I don't know what that was, our standards that this unit is addressing. And some of these standards you'll see in multiple units. Some of them are in only one unit. Some of them are more power standards, if you will. But in thinking that we're looking at 4th, 5th, 6th, and then all the way down to kindergarten, sometimes these objectives need to be in more student-friendly language. So we also have them rewritten in this way. So explain how civilizations developed in the Americas. Describe some early civilizations. So this is more of a day-to-day discussion with students in the way that they would hear that, that information relayed to them. Then there's learning activities that support 21st century learning. So what type of technology would be integrated potentially in this unit? And then what type of skills do we want? So collaboration, communication, creativity, research skills, critical thinking, utilizing Prezi to create a presentation, creating a glogster, which is a poster. So utilizing different tools. And they're selected specifically based on, is this tool something that does more than can be accomplished without utilizing that tech tool. So we don't use technology for the sake of using it. We want to make sure it's very intentional and limited to those intentional times. And then sometimes we have enrichment or expanded opportunities that are available. Maybe it's available to the whole class. Maybe it's available to some that need something more. And so we have, for example, region scrapbooks, creating a wall-size map puzzle that demonstrates information about various tribes. And for some of our students, some remediation or intervention activities are needed. So both of those sections are not necessarily for everybody. Sometimes it is necessary for everybody in the class. But a pre-teaching of vocabulary so that when the vocabulary words come up in the lesson, they will have already heard that term and then can make a connection to what they just learned maybe the day before, the week before, or utilizing graphic organizers, etc. And then down here is the resources. So this is right here. What resources are we using? What books are we reading? What textbooks are we using? Here it says books from the library, encyclopedias, and then specifically articles within these resources. And then we move on to the next. And obviously you can't read this from up here, but I'm just walking you through. The same information is provided for other grade levels. So I'll just show you quickly. Grade 2 writing. You can see it's that same format. We start with our content objectives, our standards, student-friendly objectives and skills, learning activities to support 21st century learning, enrichment expansion, remediation, and then here are our resources. So these are our books that we're reading that supports this particular unit in writing. They sometimes will read all of them. Sometimes they will be reading a selection from these. Sometimes students are grouped by interest and write with hitting those same standards, but write based on interest within those books there. Another piece of what's focused in here with the resources is we do have a lot of tech tools, and I wanted to share a little bit about the process of having those tech tools approved. So HB 1612 came along a few years ago, and that required that we create another layer of transparency with our tech tools. And so anytime we want to utilize an online resource, whether it's a teacher showing something, whether it's a student logging on to something, so our Envisions math program, or our Freckle program, or if it's a student utilizing a website with certain information. So they're not logging on, but they're still accessing information. All of that must be vetted, and it's vetted through the data governance team. So this board approved years ago our data governance plan, and part of that includes a data governance team that reviews these resources every Thursday at 1 o'clock, if you're interested. It's a fun time. And teachers, I'll show you where this list is. I'll start over here. So you go to administration, information technology, and then go all the way down to SAU 41 district software list. A link to this is sent out with the registration every July, along with the student handbook and all of those things that are, it's a ton of information to approve and read through. But if you ever wanted to look at it not via that link within the registration, but on your own, you want to peruse it, here it is. It's under the technology section, the software list. And another piece of this is there are different tabs, and you can look at them separately. So we have a tab for licensed software. So as we mentioned, our Ames Web Plus data. So in order for us to utilize that with students, we needed to vet it as a resource. So it has been approved here, K-6 in Brookline. Here's the name of it, Ames Web Plus, and this is a description of what the tool is. Over here, we have the website of the publisher, and then we have a privacy statement and the terms of use. So if a teacher or administrator wants to bring a resource into the classroom, to their students, et cetera, they have to submit a request with all of those links, the privacy, the publisher website, the terms of use, et cetera, their purpose, who they want to use it with, and why. So like I said, we don't blanket approve everything. We want to understand what the goal is. And if I know that Hollis is using a different resource, I might say, we're going to limit this to this particular resource. Let me show you this one instead. Or I might say, wow, this is a great one that was here. I'm going to share that with Hollis because I think this does a better job of avoiding, let's say, advertisements or distractions for students to be distracted by. So we also have our free tools and websites. So if you go to the next tab, and you can see that 20 questions is not approved for Brookline. And ABC Mouse is not approved for use in the co-op. But it is approved at Brookline. So we don't blanket approve. Just because it can be used by a 12th grader doesn't mean we're going to say it's used because it's not used. So this is both for transparency to say who's going to have access, and also to help a parent from, this is overwhelming. It's years of work, but to just try to help a parent understand, okay, what is my 4th grader really going to have access to? And then we have curricular resources. So these are resources that teachers would have access to and then utilize their curriculum in the classroom. So it might be a worksheet. It might be a blog idea and resource, for example. So the students aren't interacting with that. That's something that's just helping the teachers. Then there are Chrome extensions. So Co-Writer is a perfect example. We have Co-Writer as a Chrome extension that's pushed out, and it's available to all students, but specifically it helps struggling writers with providing additional support when they're writing. So if you turn it on, they can do provide ideas for the next appropriate word, or help with the grammar. So it really just develops that writing process, and it really co-writes with the student. So that might be something that a student might find helpful. And then we have paid library databases. So most of these you're going to see in our co-op. However, we have plenty of resources available in Brookline as well. So I just wanted to kind of bring those two areas of the website to everyone's attention, because there's a ton of information about what it is that we utilize in our classroom and what curriculum is being taught. And curriculum is a living document. It's constantly changing. And there was a lot of work done this year. Next year, actually July 1, we're beginning our comprehensive math curriculum review. So we're taking a look at what we use in Visions 2.0. We are entering year 7, so we're going to take a look. And maybe we end up continuing to use it. Maybe we don't, but we're going to have thoroughly analyzed all other options. We're also looking at it from a 7 through 12 perspective, because we want to know, are the students entering the co-op with the skills and knowledge that they need to be successful long-term, not just immediately at the 7th grade level. So as we do that work, then we'll add math to that list. But given that we were on the verge of doing that full curriculum review, it didn't make sense to put those documents out there. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you for the teams for putting all the work in and showing us all and making everyone aware that this exists. Slightly unrelated, but has the state come down with their new social studies? I know that was...
That committee has been vacated. So there is no plans for any social studies work at the state level. Yep.
Well, thank you all the more for putting so much work into the curriculum.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I can't believe the amount of information that is up there. That's an amazing document. So for you, Gina, and all the staff that worked on that, that is, I put together small pieces of that, and it takes hours. So I can't even fathom how many hours you and whoever helped you did with us. So
Every single teacher worked a lot of hours on this. They worked collaboratively. I certainly wasn't anyone's favorite person. But, it's really showcasing the great work that they do and being able to communicate that and be transparent because we are doing great work. And so we want to make sure that we build that partnership with the community so that we can say, no, this is what we're doing. And it's, solid work, as you can see from many of our test results.
Is this new this year?
What's that?
Are these new this year? I don't remember seeing.
These
not that I
particular
perused the
documents were
website
created
too.
all this year.
This year?
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, that was early release while we had asked for the extra time.
Great.
In PD days.
That's amazing work.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's unbelievable.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. So now we're at our revenue expense.
You're up, Donna.
Alrighty. So in the packet, you have your rev expense as of June 13th, 2022. We have been able to release some encumbered funds as we near the end of the year. And this has contributed to the overall balance of $168,049 that we have in our expenditures. On the revenue side, we have a projected balance of $434,744 with an unreserved fund balance for food service of $326,871. The result is a total unreserved fund balance of $278,610. With this, the district's able to fund the FY23 trusts approved by the voters of $75,000 to the Maintenance Trust Fund, $25,000 to the Special Education Trust Fund. The maximum fund balance for the district, the maximum fund balance of the district is permitted to retain is the $140,161. And if we were to retain that, the result is an anticipated $38,449 to return to the taxpayers. And this $38,449 is an estimate as of June 13th. It could vary a bit. And just on a side note, I wanted to mention that we recently had the RMMS walk-in freezer refrigerator breakdown, which is going to cost an upwards of $40,000 to $45,000 to replace. Thankfully, we do have the funds in the food service fund balance, but this is just an example of why we like to have these fund balances for situations that are very unexpected. So.
That's awesome. So does that 38 include that 45 potentially for the freezer? Like, or is
That's
that kind of?
That's different. That's from the
Okay, so
food
that's
service.
like vacated,
That's
right?
from the food service fund balance. Yep.
So that comes out of the 326,871 line?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, it doesn't because we already have it already. This 226 would be for this year, but we already have the existing.
We have other funds for it. Okay, so it doesn't affect it at all.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
And just remember, the food service will change again next year because we go back to lunches on free for everybody. So
Right.
that has kind of artificially inflated that line.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, that helps.
Yep.
Thanks.
It's another important piece for everyone to fill out their forms at the beginning of the year.
Absolutely.
It's not just a blanket free.
Correct.
Numbers.
Yep. Just to give a quick update again on the Special Ed Trust Fund, our current balance is $185,180. That assumes we spend the full $40,000 that the board approved. We said up to $40,000. As Donna said, we're still closing accounts and POs, so there may be that we won't need to use the whole 40. The voters approved an additional $25,000 in FY23. We don't have any expenditures as of right now. Typically, expenditures for this line item come out of move-ins over the summer, students we couldn't plan on from a budget point of view. So our resulting balance is $210,180 in the special ed trust fund. So we have really kind of finished up the year on a kind of a positive note. I don't think we'll return less than the 38, but it might be give or take a little, depending on the last 2 weeks of the month. Any questions for Donna or I?
Nope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're at the facilities update?
Yep, I just wanted to let the board know, the next item we're going to do is, very shortly, is the bond resolution. To that end, we submitted the bid drawings. So the drawings went out. As I told you, we continued to work on that in anticipating of the voters' approval. So those drawings have gone out. We expect to have, I'd say, numbers by mid-July and be able to bring those back. We believe right now we have a very solid project, which will include two new classrooms where the current library is. You'll have a brand-new library on the first floor. You'll have another area of what I'll call flex space that we're leaning towards faculty space, as well as a flex space that we're looking at more of meeting rooms and special ed spaces. When you come up the top of the stairs, there'll be a conference room there that will be used for meetings as well, because that's one of the things we desperately lack. And the main difference is one of those staircases will be coming out, and that will be a new security entrance office where everybody will check in there. We anticipate probably destruction end of July, and we'll be working in August. We'll be fine to open school even with the work taking place because it's not an emergency exit. We will be just transitioning to the Milford Street exit for primary entrance or exit. Buses come in the rear, so there's really no obstacles for making that happen, and we'll have an update on the complete schedule once we get the bid drawings back. I also want to, before I forget, last meeting, Kelly had asked about an SRO, so I did go over and meet with Chief Quigley, and he's going to put some cost numbers together. And it's my intent to bring it to you in August. It'll be kind of the first thing we kick off the budget with. But I would, in Hollis, a fully loaded police position, which I'm guessing is very similar to Brookline, is going to be somewhere between right around $85,000 to $100,000. That would be fully loaded, so that's my salary and my benefits and retirement and all those pieces. He was very willing to work with us. We're also going to look and see if there are grant opportunities. We were able to take advantage of a grant in Hollis. We believe that is reopening based on some of the recent unfortunate happenings. And if that's the case, the chief and I will work together and work with Joe Hebecki, who did it for Hollis, to submit a grant and see if we can get that grant funded. And usually the grant is for the first 3 years, and it's a portion of the costs.
And is that the difference between the SRO and the CRO? Or
The SRO and the CRO, in the elementaries in Hollis, working with the chief, we went with the CRO, which is a community resource officer, because they wanted to utilize that individual for many more things than just a school. So when you look at the co-op, we have an SRO, and he's dedicated to those two buildings because the volume of work is there to justify it. And the community resource officer, especially during the summer months, this would allow the town to take advantage of an officer who could move from the schools back to patrol if the chief saw fit, because it would be the chief's employee.
Right.
We create a memorandum of understanding of how the officer is selected, which the chief would want school input on, to make sure we're hiring somebody that we feel would work well with children. And then we would iron out all the nitty-gritty details, but the evaluation of the officer, and I'll just use the example of Hollis, is done by the Brookline Police Department. But in Hollis, we provide input regarding the position. So I think we're off and running on that. I think my recommendation, if it were tonight to make a decision, I would recommend it as a separate warrant article, for that be a sole item for the voters to approve up or down on.
Right. And I thank you very much. I think that's a great start. I mean, I just want to be clear that I'm not convinced that that's the solution.
Right.
I think that there's a lot of other supports that our schools need. However, I do like the idea of a CRO versus an SRO, just because I know there's a lot of talk tonight, as there is every night, about differences between the two communities. And I think because of the relationship that Officer Bergeron, and I don't know the CRO because I'm not in the Hollis elementary schools, has with our students and has with parents, is probably partly responsible for the relationship that Hollis residents have with their police department, which I think is not the experience of Brookline residents with our police department. And I haven't been here long enough to know if that was different when we had the DARE officer in the schools, if that was a different vibe,
Yep.
for lack of a better word. But
And I hope you're aware that on a monthly basis, we have fire and police in, they come in and they have lunches with our kids.
I heard
So
Dan talk about that. I think that's cool.
Yeah, so we try to break down those barriers as much as possible, but we're off and running, and I think it'll be an agenda, definitely be an agenda item in August.
Okay, great, thank you.
That finishes facilities.
And then in August, will we talk a little bit about, you said the construction plan, and then I guess I'm a little curious too about, you said the Milford Street entrance and security concerns, if there are any there. Is it one entrance versus the two doors and all that?
Mhm. Yep.
Another night.
Yeah, no, we'll go through all that because it's evolving daily.
Yeah.
The chief is coming over to offer input on the security component of it, so there'll be a number of those discussions. And I think Trish and Dan will tell you that Chief Quigley is always at the other end of the phone whenever we call. Yep. Yep.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're into our deliberation section. If you recall, we did have one addition of action around expenditure from the Building Maintenance Expendable Trust. So let's put that out there right now, I think. I don't know how to make a motion for that. So I guess I'll try. So I'm going to make a motion to, does anyone else know what they want to make the motion for? I'm struggling.
Are you on the maintenance trust?
What do you mean?
I'll be happy to give you wording.
Ken.
I can, yeah.
Great.
Right here.
Is it in there?
To see what action,
I know, it's so much better.
to authorize the business manager to proceed forward with the expenditures outlined in the Maintenance Expendable Trust for this summer as detailed in the board packet.
Second?
Well, somebody, you got to move it.
Allison moves that, Karen seconded it. Very good, thank you. Thank you, Andy. Any further conversation? I think we've been forecasting this, so I don't have any questions.
And is that in the amount of $106,452?
Whatever's outlined in the 106,452, correct.
Okay.
You found it first, yeah.
That's part of my motion. Just letting Dawn know that.
I second that motion.
Okay. So it's on page 3 of the agenda packet. This is what Superintendent Corey had read
Page
at the
4.
start too. Page 4, okay. And again, this is, to me, we've talked about this for at least last two meetings. We good to put it to a vote?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? 5-0, very good, thanks. Okay, so we have a handful of other items here. Okay, so the next one is, we're gonna do, yeah, I had to stick that one in first. Oh, it was right in here. Okay, the next is around what action the board will take regarding authorizing the superintendent to hire accept resignations, or terminate staff during the summer months. So I'm going to make a motion to authorize the superintendent to hire, accept resignations, and terminate staff until September board meeting and require notification to the board of such actions. Second for Karen, okay, so now it's on the floor for discussion.
And I did hear that right, the notification of the board members.
Require notification to the board members of such actions.
Before they're taken?
I didn't hear the question.
You speak, say that in the mic so we can hear you.
Sorry. So this would be an after-the-fact notification?
Yes. Yep. And we typically do it during the summer because we could get a resignation in August. Somebody's family moves, which is very common with some of our folks that work at some of the corporate areas around. And it just expedites the process of moving forward. We typically will reach out to the unions and ask them to waive some of the interview processes, and they're usually pretty good about that as well.
Yeah, the intent of this too is around a competitive labor market. Sometimes we've not had a July meeting, so it could actually stagnate the hiring process too.
And then we lose qualified candidates.
Which we can't do.
Right. Any other discussion on this? Okay, let's put it to vote. All in favor? 5-0. Okay, now we're at the bond resolution.
That one.
So for those that have the outline, it's a lot in there. I'm going to read the resolution, I'm sorry, the motion itself. So I will make a motion that the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize $1,500,000 General Obligation Bond for ADA and Security Improvements to the Richard Mahakian Memorial School be approved in form presented to this meeting, and that an attested copy of said resolution be included with the minutes of this meeting.
I got a question. Aren't we doing stuff to CSDA? Aren't we doing things to CSDA?
No,
No, you took that out?
that was if the 2.9 had passed.
Thank you. I've lost track.
Yep, so
Okay.
this is just,
I'm good.
this
This
is
is like
the
that
elevator,
special
this is
meeting
what
that we voted on
Andy had
last
just talked
week.
about, elevator, 2 classrooms, security down on the first floor, and then the conference room that develops from that.
Making a punctuation slashes over
Yep, and to the point Karen's making, this is the result of our special meeting and the outcome where this did pass.
I'm good.
Okay, let's put it to a vote. All in favor? 5-0, very good. Okay, so our next item is around a labor attorney for teacher negotiations, and we have a memo.
Yep. I had provided you with a memo from Tom Clausen. Tom Clausen has been the long-term labor attorney for the Hollis School District, the Co-op School District, and the town of Hollis. In Brookline, we had a gentleman, Will Phillips, for many years, who did our labor. Will was in private practice, he was outstanding, but Will decided to move to the New Hampshire School Boards Association and is now their attorney. Tom is recently going out and practicing on his own. Therefore, he has more flexibility with clients. He lives in Nashua, so he would like to stay in this area. He does an outstanding job. I highly recommend him and encourage the board to consider using him for your labor. And it's not only your contract negotiations, but it's any grievances or things that come up during the school year. He is very familiar with the UNISERV director, who represents Brookline because she represents Hollis and the co-op. And I think this would be a very good thing to have one attorney doing our contracts, because many times we try to get them as similar as possible from wording so that we can utilize the clauses in the correct way. And Gina and I sometimes have to run back and pull out the different books because we're not quite there yet. And his rate is actually a reduction from what we're paying, and that's simply as he moves out on his own, he has much less overhead than he did when he was working for a large firm who was across the country.
So I'm going to put a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to select Tom Clausen for our labor attorney.
Second that.
Seconded, so that's on the floor for discussion now.
So I don't know if anyone else has worked with Tom, but I have. I found him to be a wonderful professional. He's easy to chat with. He's knowledgeable. I have a lot of confidence in him. I think he would be a great selection.
We used a labor attorney for our last labor negotiations, I believe, right? A few years.
We went with Jim O'Shaughnessy from Drummond and Woodson, but Drummond and Woodson is our attorney for everything else, so they don't necessarily specialize in labor.
Okay.
That's Tom's forte, and as much as Drummond and Woodson did an outstanding job, this consistency of one attorney for all negotiations would really help.
Thank you for that clarification. That helps frame it for me. You have the question, Allison?
I'm good.
Okay. Ready for a vote? All in favor? 5-0. Okay, so we are moving over to our policy section now. The first is ACE, procedural safeguards, non-discrimination of the basis of handicap or disability. So I will make a motion to accept the second reading of policy ACE, procedural safeguards, non-discrimination on the basis of handicap disability. Seconded by Karen.
So for this, there are no changes between first reading and second reading. Remember, took out a lot of the language and essentially referred everybody to the procedural safeguards handbook that is handed to all families at meetings. So it's very straightforward.
Okay. Do we need a third reading?
We could probably waive
Do
it.
second and final. If there's been no changes to it, and it's been out there, this is the second time it's out there.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Sometimes we just leave it for the community, but this one seems fairly non-contentious. If everyone's good, okay, I'll withdraw that then. I will withdraw my motion. Make a motion to accept the second and final reading of policy ACE, procedural safeguards, non-discrimination on the basis of handicap disability.
Second that.
Okay, ready for a vote? All right, all in favor? All right, that's 5-0 for a final reading. Thank you. Okay, our next one is policy IGE. So I will make a motion to amend policy IGE, parental objections to specific course material in its entirety by replacing it with the copy provided with the agenda and accept the second reading as amended.
So, second?
Second that. Now it's on the floor for conversation, discussion.
So the policy committee met and reviewed the feedback from both the board meeting and from members that shared feedback. So some of this was just rearranging it. And let's see, what else? Just clarify, like I said, rearranging it. So down at the bottom, you see opt-out requests. There's a line through that, but it is kind of integrated into the second paragraph. And Karen,
It was just to provide consistency with another policy.
yes, thank you. To provide consistency with IHAM, I believe it is, IHAM and KEC. So.
Questions, concerns?
I was just reading it again.
It's a fun policy committee, so.
Okay, I would just propose we leave this as a second reading as opposed to a final.
Yeah.
For everyone to digest that. Okay, we ready for a vote then? All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Okay, our next is policy JICK. So I will make a motion to accept the first reading of policy JICK, pupil safety and violence prevention, bullying, as presented.
Second?
Thanks. So that's on the floor for discussion now.
So this one was just updated to include, we haven't updated, I think, since 2010. Is this the one?
Sorry. They're all sticking together.
Yeah.
Yes, 2010.
2010, so there were some legislative changes that came along. They were added, they're underlined, you can read them. We added the RSA that was added at the end. That's basically what we did refer to the School Board Association template. We looked at Hollis,
Most of the changes were with the changes in the law, but regarding both the timeline and the appeals. That's about it.
Okay, yeah, I see that right at the end. We always get our school board, New Hampshire School Board Association that gives feedback on these as well, right?
Well, this one we didn't send to them, but we have recently made the similar changes in Hollis and Co-op with attorneys, and we looked at their sample policy, so
Okay.
it matches.
This is a thorough, this is a larger policy and an important one. That's why I was just asking.
Yep.
What's been reviewed.
Can I just ask a couple of clarifying questions? In section 2, subsection 1, occurs on or is delivered to school property or a school-sponsored activity or event on or off school property, and it's referencing addressing bullying that occurs on or is delivered to school property.
It's not relating to like cyberbullying?
Yeah, no, I know what it
Like, so
overall
if
relates to, but the
school-
wording.
I think it means like if the school owns the Chromebook, you know what I mean, and the.
So if it doesn't, it means if somebody
Receives-
destroys school or.
I would take it to mean that if somebody sent an email.
That you received on your
And
school.
you received on your
Gotcha,
school
gotcha.
account.
Yes, that totally makes sense. I apologize. I was thinking.
No,
something
it's
else.
great.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And then the other thing, just overall with the policy, I was, and it was a long one, so I
thorough.
digested it as much as I could.
Yeah.
But I know there's a problem with when we discipline students, we can't tell the other family what happened, and we absolutely cannot. I 100% get that, and that would be a violation of every law possible. However, in this policy, we're talking about process to protect peoples from retaliation. I don't know what page it is, it's not numbered.
45.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's section 3. And I think if it rises to that level, and it might be that later we're covered by this, but that this plan that involves a victim should be communicated to the family. I know we're doing that, but I just feel like a lot of this is about what happens to the alleged perpetrator, but we're now saying, okay, this is bad enough that we're going to have a plan put together because a student believes they're going to be retaliated against. So in practice, I know it happens, but if we're developing policy that we might not look at for another 10 years, I don't think it's clear there. And then that just goes to section 7, where we're talking about sort of restorative measures and restitution and mediation. And I just want to make clear that if a student has to participate in a restitution or a mediation as a victim, also that their family is notified. I think there's somewhere in here about notifying families, but if somebody could read it and make sure it's clear that that has to happen, because we can have people not understand that.
We'll take that back to policy and highlight it for the second reading.
Okay, thank you.
Just out of curiosity, is there a reason we call bullying a single event? Like in the front, in the very top line, defined as a single significant incident or a pattern of incidents. And typically, we see bullying as a pattern of incidents versus like an assault or a battery, which is what I would consider a single incident, right?
Right.
'Cause
And
I
again,
think, I hate this. It's like this is only my personal pet peeve. It's like if somebody says, I don't want to play with you on the playground, I've been bullied today.
yeah, it's not to address that. It's more that single event that you're talking about, maybe borderline assault, but when you're dealing with children who developmentally don't know what assault is, it's kind of, it gets that label of bullying. And then if a parent wanted to pursue something further, they would work with the Brookline Police Department.
It could also be seen as some type of significant, let's say, social media blast or inappropriate photo. So it's a one-time thing, but it's pretty devastating and significant.
I agree. I'm not arguing the intent. It's more of like it's my own personal pet peeve against using the word bullying for a single event.
Sure.
Like I would love to have a different word than just because bullying really is a repeated pattern of behavior versus. And there should be the same repercussions. So I'm not even trying to say that, but I don't know if that's a legality thing.
At times, fights need to be called fights, not bullying, things like that. So we try to do a good job of clarifying what it is, because a one-time fight may come back again, or it may simply be two individuals who had a bad day.
Right.
And that's where the principals have the responsibility of making that call, and that's one of the tougher pieces with the parents, because it's not always black and white. And at first grade or second grade, if I no longer want to play with you at recess, that becomes a problem, and parents will call us about that. And yes, we'll work on the issue, but it's not necessarily bullying.
Right, and I think that also needs to kind of be clarified for people, that like it's more of a, like these are truly significant patterns and events versus more minor, typical issues.
Okay, I would encourage everyone to read this again. This is a long, heavy read, and we'll talk about it again next month. And this is one, too, that I know bullying was mentioned earlier this evening, so I would just offer up, this is, we talked about public input. This is an opportunity, too, because this came up several times. So that's policy JICK.
Do we need to approve the second reading?
Yep, we're going to do, well, it's the first reading. So first reading's on the floor right now. Ready for a vote? Okay, all in favor? 5-0. Okay, our next one is policy IHAM, which is the health education exemption from instruction. So I will make a motion to accept the first reading of policy IHAM, health education and exemption from instruction.
Second?
Second by Allison, so that's on the floor for discussion.
Was this not in existence before?
This was not in existence, and here it is. So the RSA governs this, so we've been following the law. We just hadn't, we didn't have a policy that told us to follow the law, but we've been doing it. So this really just is very specific about objection and request for exemption from health education. But it's really similar to the policy that we just spoke about, IGE, parental objections, but this is specific to health education. And what's more specific about this and why it's sort of pulled out from the rest of it is that it does require 2 weeks advance notice of the materials to families. So we're in CSDA right now, so our Mrs. Van Dyke sends out that video link of the video that they're going to show in the class, with plenty of notification. Oftentimes it's like 4 to 6 weeks prior to the instruction.
Just out of curiosity, do we need a reference in the last paragraph to IGE?
We do not need a reference. Unless I'm missing something.
Just for the alternative assignment?
No.
Okay.
Because you still have to do it.
It's obvious to me, but
Well, up on top it says related policy IGE, but basically, it's stating the same thing, and that's why we wanted to make sure that the language was aligned between them, so we didn't have competing policies. But we can discuss that in policy to see if it's not clear.
Okay. Put it to a vote. This is the first reading on this one. All in favor? 5-0. Okay, I think we're our last policy here. This is policy KEC, policy on reconsideration of instructional material. So I'm going to make a motion to amend in the second paragraph by adding the composition of the book review committee will vary based on the book material in question or the nature of the request. And in the third paragraph, by replacing Hollis with Brookline, and accept the second reading of KEC policy.
This is the second time we've seen this.
Policy on reconsideration of instructional material as amended.
It says first reading June 22nd, 2022.
Yeah, but we read it at the May meeting.
Yeah, we read it. That's how that book review question.
This is the second
came in.
reading.
Yeah.
So that's on the, I need a second for that.
Second?
Second by Allison, thanks. So it's on the floor for discussion.
I would love to, where the added sentence, the composition of the book review committee will vary based on the book material in question or the nature of the request, to maybe include something to the effect of, to include the appropriate grade, an appropriate grade level teacher and a librarian.
So with legal counsel advice, we are encouraged to not be that specific, just based on what other districts have experienced this year. However, that is the intent, and it depends, and that's why it says based on the nature of the material. So, for example, there was a question about a piece of literature read in 8th grade. So the English teachers in the middle school, plus the librarian, plus English teachers at the high school, plus school counselors in both middle school and high school, all reviewed the book and made a statement to the principal about recommendations. So we absolutely want it to be very comprehensive, but our legal counsel has advised us not to be too specific to corner us into require. What if we didn't have a librarian at that time? Mm-hmm. Is sort of the conundrum that you can fall into. So,
are students ever included in these curriculum review committees?
Certainly not at the elementary school district.
I'm thinking more like perhaps, a student at a higher grade level that may have, read that book or whatever resource and could have some perspective from a student's perspective.
It's definitely a possibility. Nothing prevents us from doing so.
Okay.
Do we tie, so, your questions tie more around procedure as opposed to policy anyway. I don't know how much we get into procedure or if this says anything on that. Is there any procedure around this, or do we look to the policy and we have a standard operating?
We do have a standard operating procedure internally. And it really depends on what is brought forward, the nature of the concern and the complaint, and then that sort of directs who's involved. But it's definitely a committee composed of multiple people with various perspectives.
Okay. The only thing I would just offer to is the first reading was last month down below. Right. Okay, are we ready for a vote? All right, all in favor? 5-0, very good. Okay, so that closes the deliberation section. We talked about a non-public earlier, so I'm going to make a motion that the board go by roll call into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A3 to A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, and RSA 91A32, to discuss a matter which, discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of a person other than a member of the body or agency itself.
Second.
Second that. So this is a roll call vote. So Allison, we'll start with you.
Allison, aye?
Kelly, aye.
Colleen, aye.
Karen, aye.
Ken, aye. So we are in non-public at 9:15 PM.
Okay, we're going to use